The audiobook, The Social Games We Play, Winning at the Social Games of Everyday Life, uncovers the hidden patterns that are controlling your relationships. Have you ever wondered why conversations are like déjà vu? Why some people seem to connect with ease while others just can't? Learn how to turn stilted conversations into rich connections, prevent conflicts from erupting, and create genuine rapport in any environment. Without this knowledge, you'll continue to have the same frustrations and lost opportunities. Your relationships are worth more than a shot in the dark. To continue, I encourage you to download the free executive summary of this book, including the main points and takeaways of every chapter. Research indicates that exposure to content in a variety of different formats dramatically increases learning and recall. Click the first link in the description to get your free executive summary and squeeze every bit of learning out of it that you can. It's free for a limited time only, so be sure to catch it while you can. Chapter 1: Spot Scripts. Have you ever found yourself in an argument that feels ludicrously familiar? The same fight with your partner that seems to loop back on itself. That perpetual stress with your coworker that runs in exactly the same way each time. The family dinner conversation that for some reason always goes off track at the very same moment. These aren't accidents. They're scripts, and they're hijacking your social life behind your back. Most of us live through our days with no idea the underlying patterns that dictate our interactions are even in effect. We respond to triggers, play out rote roles, and we have no idea why we keep encountering the same pitfalls. But suppose you could observe these scripts playing out in the moment. Suppose you could see the point a toxic pattern starts and opt to respond differently. That is the strength of building your pattern radar. The capacity to notice scripts playing out as they happen and to make a deliberate choice about following them or not. Imagine scripts are pre-written conversations that occur between individuals. They're like background social software that governs how you react to others and how they react to you. Some scripts work for you, building harmony and connection. Others get you stuck in patterns of conflict, resentment, or emotional distance. The intriguing reality is that these scripts follow a predictable pattern depending on which aspect of ourselves is speaking. As per transactional analysis, a psychological theory devised by psychiatrist Eric Berne, we all work from three different ego states: parent, adult, and child. When you talk from your parent state, you're acting as if you're channeling authority figures from your past, and you're giving out rules, judgments, or parental care. Your tone may become a critical one. You ought to know better, or a caring one. Allow me to assist you with that. Your body language also changes. Maybe a wagging finger, arms crossed over your chest, or a protective hug. The adult state is your logical data processing facility. Here you evaluate information objectively, resolve problems, and make fact-based decisions, not emotional ones. Your speech becomes measured and concise. I observe that, or what are our choices here? Your stance is even, your tone even. The child state contains your emotional responses, creativity, and playfulness. In its natural state, it brings joy, spontaneity, and wonder. In its adapted state, it may manifest as compliance, rebellion, or emotional reactivity. When acting from child, you may talk impulsively, be vulnerable, or respond with unedited emotion. These ego states are not fixed personality types. They're modes we all toggle among during the day. The issues come when some states get triggered automatically in particular situations, getting us stuck in scripts that don't benefit our relationship. Look at this typical script. A partner comes home late from work. The waiting partner, working from critical parent, comments brusquely, "You're late again. You always do this." This activates the other's adapted child who defends, "It's not my fault. The meeting went overtime and you never get my job pressures." The first partner, whose authority is being questioned, doubles down with additional parent state criticism and the cycle builds. This cross-transaction in which a message that is being sent from one ego state is responded to by an unanticipated one is the source of the friction driving most relationship conflict. If the waiting partner had functioned from adult rather than, "I see that you're late and I'm anxious," they would have gotten an adult response. "Yes. The appointment ran long. I should have called you to let you know," making a complementary transaction keep communication going without a hitch. The insight is that these scripts are not arbitrary. They have patterns we can learn to identify. Research verifies the strength of this knowledge. A 2024 study of 242 adults demonstrated that individuals who accurately identified their conversation partner's ego state within conversations performed 34% higher on ratings of conversational clarity and rated their conversations considerably warmer. Korean medical scientists found that students with an overactive adapted child state attained significantly lower scores in all aspects of communication skills. And an European study proved that managers who were trained in identifying ego states resolved business conflicts 19% quicker than their untrained coworkers. But recognition is only the beginning. The actual change occurs when you become able to change states not reactively, but consciously. Here your pattern radar comes into play. To develop this radar, begin by getting acquainted with the characteristic signs of each ego state. Parent state language tends to contain absolutes and judgments. Always, never, should, must. The body language may include pointing fingers, hands on hips, or protective stance. The tone may be authoritative, disapproving, or nurturing. Adult state communication is characterized by factual observations, open questions, and problem-solving language. I observe. What can we do? Let's look at the facts. The posture is relaxed with open body and stable eye contact. The tone is even and measured. Child state cues are emotional words, impulsivity and expressions of wanting. I want, I feel, it's not fair. Body language may indicate excitement, withdrawal or emotional reactivity, arms flailing, shoulders slumped, eyes cast down or open wide in wonder. Environmental cues may also trigger certain ego states as well. Time pressure tends to trigger critical parent or adapted child. Public places could trigger modified child compliance. High state conditions could drive us to parent state control or child state anxiety. When you are able to recognize these states in yourself and others, you can start charting the transactions across them. Complementary transactions, when the response is from the anticipated ego state, keep communications running smoothly. Adult-to-adult transactions exchange information effectively. Supportive coaching moments can be created by nurturing parent-to-free child interactions. Cross-transactions, on the other hand, generate communication breakdowns. A critical parent message with free child rebellion generates power struggles. An adapted child plea for reassurance with adult analysis comes across as cold and dismissive. Most insidious, perhaps, are ulterior transactions where the words may sound adult-like, but a secret psychological message works beneath. I'm just trying to assist might come across as warm parent on the surface, but have a critical parent underlying message of because you're obviously incompetent. The pattern detector you're creating enables you to catch these dynamics in the moment. When you sense a discussion going into well-trodden, unhelpful ground, you can step in, breathe, and intentionally opt for a new response, often moving towards the adult state to diffuse tension. This isn't about manipulating others. It's about interrupting harmful scripts and creating space for more productive exchanges. As you change your own ego state, you encourage other people to switch theirs too. To build a stronger pattern radar, have a go at the following exercise. For the remainder of the day, keep an eye on who is doing which ego states within each interaction in which you encounter a familiar type of conversation going on. Note down on how much effect there is on emotional levels from -10 up to +10. This easy awareness exercise usually brings surprising patterns to your everyday interactions. Second, do the ego state shift drill. When you catch yourself triggered into parent or child, stop for a moment. Breathe deeply, then deliberately switch to adult by asking a neutral information-seeking question. What's the outcome we're both hoping for here? This quick reset can shift the course of a challenging conversation. Lastly, close every day with a reflection question. What scripts worked for me today? Which ones ensnared me and why? This develops the metacognitive awareness that enables you to rewrite unhelpful scripts over time. As you build this skill, you'll see deep shifts in your relationships. Conflicts resolve more rapidly. Conversations feel more rewarding. You'll find you're less reactive and more responsive, capable of selecting your communication style instead of acting on automatic patterns. A meta-analysis of 17 transactional analysis interventions across multiple studies reported consistent gains in interpersonal competence among participants. The research is clear. Becoming aware of conversational scripts and ego states significantly enhances relationship quality. This pattern spotting ability forms the foundation for all the skills we'll explore in subsequent chapters. Once you can recognize the scripts running your social interactions, you gain the power to rewrite them. You move from unconscious reaction to conscious choice, the first essential step in mastering the social game. As your pattern radar gets stronger, you'll begin to notice not only the scripts themselves, but also the hidden cues that lead to them. A particular tone of voice, a familiar line, even certain environments can engage your parent or child state reflexively. When you become aware of these cues, you have even more mastery over your response. The greatest strength of building this awareness is that it holds even when other people are unfamiliar with these ideas. You do not require everyone in your life to grasp ego states and transactions. Your unilateral change can turn the whole dynamic around. Imagine it as learning to read the invisible social script that's been guiding your relationships until now. Once you know it, you can't not know it. And once you can identify these patterns in real time, you get the power to decide whether to play the script or improvise one anew. But pattern detection is only the tip of the iceberg. Once you are able to spot scripts consistently, you'll want tools to forge healthier exchanges, means of exchanging and receiving the attention all humans need without sliding into manipulative games. Next chapter, we'll discuss building these positive strokes that energize connection and trust, turning your social interactions into draining exchanges for draining ones to become energizing encounters that value and see both parties. Build strokes, Chapter 2. Have you ever noticed how a single comment can make or break your day? The casual compliment from a stranger that leaves you walking taller. The thoughtful message from a friend that warms you hours later. Or conversely, that dismissive remark that somehow manages to replay in your mind on endless loop, draining your confidence with each repetition. These moments of validation, or non-validation, impact our emotional state more deeply than most of us are aware. They create the unseen currency of our social transactions that decide if we feel appreciated, connected, and safe in our relationships or constantly starved for validation. What if you could become proficient in this secret economy of social validation? What if, rather than being at others' mercy with attention, you could create a sustainable system that keeps you emotionally fed no matter what happens around you? That is the potential of knowing what psychologists refer to as strokes, those fleeting moments of recognition that tell us our presence is important to others. But strokes are not equal, and what we pursue, accept, and offer them controls whether they will make us whole or keep us in a permanent state of emotional poverty. Now that we are hyper-connected in the modern era, we have unprecedented means for trading praise. Each like, comment, and share is a microstroke, a small infusion of recognition. And yet in this very highly connected world, many feel they are hungrier than ever before for true recognition. They reload their screens obsessively, anticipating that the next notice will quell a craving which only becomes increasingly urgent with each virtual bite. A 2024 survey demonstrated that excessive reliance on social approval is associated with 31% greater social anxiety ratings. The more we are dependent on them for strokes, the more uneasy we feel about getting them, and so we remain in a constant loop of looking at our phones with growing detachment. Why do we do it? To know, we must see what strokes really are and how they work in our psychological economy. In transactional analysis, a stroke is the smallest unit of social acknowledgement. Physical touch feeds babies, these psychological pats feed our emotional life throughout life. We require them to grow, literally. Research indicates that individuals deprived of significant social acknowledgement develop stress responses akin to physical pain. Strokes have different types. Positive strokes recognize our value and abilities. I like the way you did that, or you are important to me. Negative strokes, though still recognizing us, contain criticism or disapproval. You always do this wrong, or why can't you be like your sister? Contrary to expectation, most people unwittingly ask for negative strokes when positive strokes are not offered. The explanation is straightforward. Negative attention hurts less than nothing at all. This is the reason some relationships become a conflict pattern. The drama provides a constant stream of strokes, although they are hurting ones. Even more pernicious are so-called counterfeit strokes. The shallow, robotic, or manipulative forms of recognition that characterize many social interactions. The obligatory compliment comment. The self-deprecation meant to lure compliments. The performative public compliment intended for audience applause more than actual acknowledgement. These fake strokes give us a fleeting sense of connection, but leave us feeling strangely hollow after. They're the emotional equivalent of empty calories, satisfying for the moment, but eventually draining. To shift your social experience, you must recognize the stroke economy at work in your life. Think of your emotional well-being as an account with assets and liabilities. On the asset side are authentic expressions of gratitude, real self-recognition, and deep connections. On the side of liability are validation based on comparisons, sarcasm masquerading as humor, and recognition attached to strings. The majority exist with a chronic stroke deficit and are always searching for external validation to compensate for an internal one. They come into social gatherings emotionally starved, looking for any validation they can find. This starvation gets them manipulated and leaves them dehydrated post-interaction, not energized. The solution is not refusing external validation wholesale. We're social beings who naturally feed on healthy interpersonal recognition. Instead, the solution is creating a balanced stroke economy in which you create a lot of internal validation while trading high-quality strokes with others. We'll begin with internal validation, the cornerstone of a healthy stroke economy. Studies validate its effectiveness. A 2024 study of self-affirmations discovered that internal validation predicted greater resilience and less stress even when external feedback was withheld. The impact was most powerful in high-pressure environments exactly when we need emotional calm the most. Internal validation starts with self-awareness. What are the values most important to you? What are the qualities you value in yourself? What are the small victories worth celebrating? Most individuals can see others' success more easily than their own, but self-acknowledgement is a learned skill. One of the most effective methods is core value journaling. List 3 to 5 values that are core to your being. Maybe honesty, creativity, compassion, courage, or growth. Each day, record one small way you live out these values in action. This creates a direct line between your deepest values and your daily behavior, reinforcing your sense of living authentically. Another practice that might initially feel uncomfortable, but grows more natural with repetition, is mirror affirmation. Stand before a mirror and speak to yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a good friend. Start with simple acknowledgments. You handled that difficult conversation with patience, or I appreciate your effort to try something new today. The secret to making this practice useful instead of embarrassing is specificity and authenticity. Overly generic, hyperbolic affirmations tend to sound insincere. Instead, acknowledge concrete actions and their effects. When you set aside time to listen to your coworker today, you showed genuine empathy. That's something I appreciate about you. Practices of gratitude also reinforce your internal stroke bank. A meta-analysis of 87 gratitude interventions revealed that they uniformly increased life satisfaction and decreased depressive symptoms. The most basic strategy is a 3-minute daily exercise in tiny wins, 90 seconds spent recognizing 3 small good things or achievements in your day. As your internal validation becomes stronger, you will begin to enter social situations from a place of sufficiency instead of scarcity. This change redefines the way you both provide and receive outside strokes, the acknowledgement passed between individuals. Giving high-impact strokes is an art that requires accuracy and sincerity. The strongest acknowledgements have a simple structure. They identify a specific behavior, its positive effect, and what it says about the individual's identity or values. For instance, instead of a vague "good job on that presentation," you could say, "The way you broke down that difficult information made it easy for everyone in the room." It reflected your sincere commitment to ensuring that everybody gets it, rather than to trying to impress people with your information. This specificity turns a happy compliment into authentic recognition that confirms the individual's deeper nature. It shows that you're actually looking at them, not merely going through the social gesture of flattery. Nonverbal strokes can be as strong. A respectful listening stance, a genuine smile, a suitable touch on the arm or shoulder at the appropriate moment. Even online strokes can have authentic acknowledgement if they're specific and thoughtful instead of rote. Receiving strokes as skillfully as giving them is equally important. Most people deflect compliments or recognition, either out of false modesty or because they are uncomfortable with being recognized. Deflecting doesn't benefit anyone. It deprives the giver of the satisfaction of recognizing you and keeps you from soaking up the positive effect. A better method is the thank you, tell me more technique. When somebody gives you recognition, thank them, then ask for expansion. That means a great deal to me. What in particular did you get out of it? This way, you receive the stroke completely and deepen the interaction. The most advanced skill is turning outside approval into inside affirmation. When another person notices a quality in you, internally record it as proof of that quality instead of relying on their ongoing acknowledgement of it. In this manner, outside strokes reinforce your internal validation instead of leading to dependency. Neuroscience provides interesting information about why genuine strokes feel so satisfying. Real social acknowledgement releases oxytocin, sometimes referred to as the trust hormone, which fosters bonding and cooperation. A 2024 study discovered that oxytocin raised willingness to share resources by 18% and enhanced emotional recognition, particularly in first-time interactions. This produces a 30-minute window of trust following meaningful recognition, during which individuals are more receptive to connection and collaboration. Scheduling your most critical conversations or requests within this window can greatly increase receptivity. As you become more aware of strokes in your interactions, you can start crafting positive feedback loops that work for all parties. The PERMA model of positive psychology provides a helpful framework, proposing that well-being has 5 dimensions. Positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Various strokes sustain various aspects. Noticing someone's excitement or pleasure sustains positive effect. Noticing their concentration or flow state sustains engagement. Noticing your bond sustains relationships. Noticing the meaning of their work sustains meaning. Noticing their progress or success sustains achievement. By intentionally mixing up the strokes you provide along these aspects, you build a fuller kind of recognition that promotes overall well-being. An 8-week PERMA trial of education showed this effect, with university students who learned to trade recognition on these dimensions having a 22% increase in relationship quality over controls. To put these insights into practice, think about taking up a simple stroke budget. Suppose you have 10 tokens of recognition to spend each day, 5 for yourself and 5 for others. This mental bookkeeping keeps you from neglecting self-acknowledgement or starving vital relationships. Take a daily audit at the end of each day. Did you have a balanced stroke economy today, or were you in deficit? Which relationships got healthy acknowledgement, and which could use more tomorrow? This daily check-in avoids the unconscious stroke imbalances that create resentment or neediness in relationships. Weekly, you can use a simple grid to monitor stroke patterns within your main relationships. This will usually pay remarkable dividends. Maybe you're over-investing in relationships that give you little payback in the way of reciprocal recognition or ignoring relationships that feed you on a consistent basis. With this reflection, you can then make intentional changes to have a better stroked economy. The long-term rewards of being a master of stroke exchanges are immense. Research on 17 studies indicates that individuals who are trained in healthy recognition patterns report significantly better communication warmth and relationship satisfaction. They acquire what we can refer to as default optimism, a generally positive attitude that endures even in the face of adversity. They also tend to acquire a sort of magnetic presence. Individuals naturally tend to be attracted to those who provide authentic high-quality recognition without neediness or manipulation. When you're working from stroke sufficiency instead of scarcity, your social interactions become energizing instead of draining for all parties. Most importantly, in this modern digital age, stroke mastery produces a type of platform immunity. To be able to use social media as a playground for connection instead of a validation drip you rely on for emotional survival. You can benefit from the digital interaction without being controlled by its designed addiction loops. To start building your stroke economy right now, just do this 48-hour gratitude sprint. Write and say out loud 10 real thank yous for the next 2 days. These can be for small acts of kindnesses, things you like to see in others, or efforts that would otherwise go unnoticed. Pay attention to how this intentional stroke giving impacts both the receivers and your internal state. Next, do the 7-day mirror drill. Take 2 minutes every morning giving yourself particular genuine acknowledgement for things and behaviors you like to see. Monitor how this exercise impacts your resilience and confidence levels throughout the day. Lastly, identify a partner for a stroke swap challenge. Trade precision praise with the behavior impact identity formula, then talk about how various kinds of recognition impact you. This meta discussion of strokes usually brings out individual preferences that can improve all your relationships. As you build these habits, you'll discover that you're less susceptible to manipulation, less needy of outside approval, and better able to form healthy connections. You'll enter rooms already filled up on recognition, free to be able to pay attention to actual exchange instead of hunger for love. The economy of strokes functions whether we're aware of it or not. By making the invisible exchange system visible, you have the power to shift your social life from one of scarcity and competition to one of abundance and collaboration. But creating a healthy economy of strokes is only the start. After you've created this ground of acknowledgement, you'll have to deal with another essential aspect of social competence, the bravery to communicate your true needs and limits. In our next chapter, we're going to examine how permissioning yourself and others builds the psychological safety necessary for true connection. You'll learn why the most rewarding relationships are not constructed on a foundation of constant agreement, but on something much stronger that few people know how to build. Chapter 3. Grant permission. Have you ever bitten your tongue to keep the peace? Swallowed your words when something didn't feel right, smiled and nodded and screamed inside? If so, you're not alone. Most of us have learned to shut down parts of ourselves in the name of harmony, acceptance, or simply avoiding conflict. But what if this silence is actually undermining the very relationships we're trying to save? Consider the last time you kept quiet about a real need or feeling. Maybe you didn't say that your partner's thoughtless remark was hurtful. Perhaps you confirmed plans you silently abhorred, or maybe you remained silent when a friend overstepped a vital boundary. In this moment of silencing yourself, what did occur within you? If you are like most folks, a seed of resentment began to take hold. A micro-distance formed between your true self and the you projected. Your body likely noticed the disconnect as well. A tightness in your chest, a knot in your belly, a faint tension in your jaw. The longer these experiences of self-censorship persist, they add up. The beginnings of resentment become a forest of frustration. The little distances become a chasm of disconnection, and those physical feelings, they can turn into chronic patterns of stress that impact your well-being and health. Science bears out the price of this silence. A study of 300 couples in 2024 showed that greater amounts of self-silencing were associated with 27% lower relationship satisfaction and hugely increased jealousy. When we chronically stifle our true expression, we don't only feel worse. Our relationships actually become worse. So why do we do it? Why do so many intelligent, capable people habitually silence themselves in their most important relationships? The answer lies in powerful psychological mechanisms that prioritize short-term safety over long-term authenticity. These fear loops operate beneath our conscious awareness, scanning for rejection risks and social threats before we even realize what's happening. At the center of most fear loops is rejection sensitivity, an increased sensitivity to cues that others may disapprove of or reject us. This sensitivity generates a cognitive filter that amplifies rejection cues and dampens acceptance evidence. A neutral face becomes a frown. A moment of distraction becomes disinterest. A differing opinion becomes a personal attack. Under rejection sensitivity, communicating a need or preference is risky. Your mind computes that the risk of possible rejection is higher than the reward of genuine expression, so you fall back on silence or assent, even at the cost of your own feelings. Contemporary social worlds routinely heighten these anxieties. When opinions may be aired in an instant and public shaming is a tweet away, the costs of speaking out can be found to be extremely prohibitive. Even in intimate relationships, the specter of public judgment lurks above our discussions, reminding us in hushed tones about what's safe to say. Scripts from family and culture add to this restraint. We grew up with more or less explicit messages against upsetting the boat. We learned rules for expressing which emotions and which had to be kept secret. We discovered that some things were not to be discussed and that some questions were not to be asked. Often, these messages included gendered voice expectations. Evidence repeatedly indicates that women incur more severe social sanctions for direct assertion of needs or disagreement, whereas men frequently face impediments in the articulation of vulnerability or emotional needs. These gendered dynamics build more layers of self-censorship that curtail real connection. The cumulative impact is a sort of relational malnourishment. We crave real connection and yet also cut off the very expression that would engender it. We desire to be seen, known, and accepted as we really are. But we conceal vital parts of ourselves in fear. This is where the practice of giving permission comes to be so powerful. But what does granting permission actually look like in relationships? At its essence, granting permission is the act of creating space, in yourself and with others, for the entire scope of human need, feeling, and expression to be present without judgment. It's about becoming capable of expressing your true experience while at the same time creating safety for others to express their true experience. This double permission for yourself and others is what makes this practice different from mere assertiveness or unedited expression. It's not saying whatever you want without regard to impact. Rather, it's creating conversations where everyone's needs are relevant and nobody has to mute themselves to stay connected. The building blocks of this practice are based on understanding the anatomy of permission, the elements that make spontaneous expression both feasible and worthwhile. The first one is a generous vocabulary for specifying and articulating needs. Every human being has some basic needs for connection, autonomy, meaning, play, rest, contribution, and physical health among others. When we don't have these needs fulfilled, we get into distress, usually in the form of irritation, anxiety, or withdrawal. But most of us have never learned to specify these needs precisely, much less articulate them straight out. Rather, we become fixated on need-meeting strategies and not the needs themselves. We may demand that a partner text us all day, a strategy, without being aware of and articulating the underlying need for reassurance or contact. Being fixated on certain strategies over basic needs creates unnecessary conflict when others do not agree with our ideal way in which a need should be fulfilled. Creating a needs vocabulary helps you see what's actually underlying your discomfort in any given situation. That annoyance when your roommate doesn't wash dishes from the sink, it could be an unmet need for order, respect, or shared responsibility. The worry when your partner goes out without you. It may indicate needs for inclusion, safety, or clear agreements. When you name the need behind the reaction, you turn possible accusations into vehicles for learning. You never leave a mess of yourself behind to create connection. I'm upset because I'm in need of more orderliness in our communal spaces. Can we discuss the ways that we could do dishes differently? This movement away from blame and into curiosity is the heart of nonviolent communication, NVC, a model which has proven astonishingly effective in enhancing relationship quality. A 2023 randomized controlled trial with Korean nursing students determined that only 6 NVC training sessions yield significant increases in empathy and communication competence over controls. The second piece of permission anatomy is emotional awareness, the capacity to notice and label your feelings with specificity. Most of us use coarse labels such as good, bad, fine, or upset to indicate our state of mind, losing the useful information conveyed by more specific feeling words. It's especially useful to differentiate between primary and secondary emotions. Primary emotions are our initial core emotional reactions, such as fear, sadness, joy, or anger. Secondary emotions are responses to our primary emotions, such as feeling ashamed of being afraid or angry about feeling sad. When we are able to recognize and state primary emotions clearly, we generate clearer, more relational communication. Rather than telling someone I'm fine when you're really disappointed, you can say I'm feeling sad that our plans changed. This emotional clarity calls for understanding, not confusion. Your body provides valuable advance warnings about your emotional state, usually before your conscious mind has a chance to catch up. Tightness in your shoulders, a pounding heart, shallow breathing, or a clenched jaw can mean that something important is calling for attention. By listening to these body signals, you have valuable seconds to decide your response instead of reacting automatically. The third element is making clear, specific requests that focus on observable behaviors rather than attitudes or feelings. Instead of asking someone to care more, which they can't directly control, you might request that they text when running more than 15 minutes late, a concrete action they can choose to take. Framing requests with "would you be willing" language emphasizes choice and collaboration rather than demand. This nuanced reorientation opens space for authentic concurrence instead of compliance or defensiveness. For freedom to thrive, psychological safety has to exist. This phrase labels a space where individuals feel comfortable speaking up, being vulnerable, and taking risks without the dread of punishment or humiliation. A stream of evidence demonstrates repeatedly that high psychological safety forecasts positive results in all situations, from working innovativeness to relationship fulfillment. You can actively build psychological safety through verbal and nonverbal cues. Verbally, provide relatively equal airtime in discussions and use authentic questions that demonstrate interest in others' views. Non-verbally, use an open posture, provide suitable nodding to indicate engagement, and adjust eye contact to a suitable level for the given relationship and cultural setting. A 2024 psychological safety survey discovered that individuals in high-safety environments reported being twice as likely to report having close personal relationships and having open conflict. By intentionally building safety cues into your interactions, you allow the natural expression to flow more easily. Asserting yourself without aggressing is yet another important skill in giving permission. Firm boundary language enables other people to grasp your limits without feeling attacked. Phrases such as, "I'm not available for that," or "I'd rather we talk about this when both of us are calm," set boundaries directly without blame or explanation. When repeated pushback is encountered by boundaries, the broken record method works, simply repeating your stance calmly without going up or down. "I appreciate you'd like to keep on with this conversation now. But as indicated, I have to gather my thoughts first. I'll be prepared to discuss it tomorrow." Tone control is also crucial. When under pressure, most individuals involuntarily increase volume, accelerate speech, or take on a harsh tone that puts others on the defensive. By deliberately controlling these factors, speaking deliberately, using a gentle volume and selecting a neutral tone, you can convey hard truths without triggering others' threat reactions. An effective equation blends emotion labeling with solution framing. "I'm frustrated at the moment," emotion label, "and I require a brief timeout before we can carry on with this discussion," solution frame. This method recognizes your emotions but heads towards resolution instead of escalation. Self-disclosure, the sharing of personal facts, thoughts, and feelings is an effective intimacy-building tool when appropriately calibrated. The onion model of self-disclosure proposes that relationships grow gradually via increasing layers of sharing, from fact to opinion to fear and dreams. Corresponding disclosure depth with the stage of relationship makes comfortable intimacy formation. Revealing your deepest fears to one who only knows you for a short time feels intrusive instead of connecting, whereas maintaining long-term relationship on the surface level avoids significant bonding. The rule of reciprocity provides cues for balance of sharing. Provide a disclosure, then pause for response, before inviting the other's experience or point of view. This cycle avoids one-sided revelation while naturally building in spaces for mutual openness. For situations when discussion wanders into unsafe ground, the existence of a pre-agreed-upon safe word or phrase enables either to indicate a need to pause or change subject without elaborate justification. This makes for a safety valve that actually facilitates more openness, because both individuals know that they are able to retreat if necessary. A 2024 meta-analysis verified that calibrated self-disclosure reliably forecasts closeness development between all kinds of relationships. The legendary 36 questions paradigm pioneered by psychologist Arthur Aaron illustrates this principle in practice. Spiral questions that time disclosure pace to match are found to speed up subjective closeness between even total strangers. To apply these principles in practice, consider developing an easy-to-use 4-step pocket card encapsulating the nonviolent communication process. Observation, what happened without judgment. Feeling, your emotional reaction. Need, the universal human need impacted. And request, the precise action you're requesting. For instance, when meetings extend beyond the planned finish time, observation, I feel anxious. Feeling, since I need predictability in my timetable. Need. Would you consider appointing a timekeeper to our next meeting? Prior to challenging conversations, take a brief safety scan of the setting, your body state, and your tone. Is the environment suitable for this conversation? Are you regulated enough in your body to be able to communicate effectively? Is your tone consistent with your intent? Having an exit plan if safety declines enables you to suspend conversations that aren't working instead of plowing through at the expense of the relationship. To start practicing permission right away, give the 24-hour challenge a try. For the next 24 hours, say out loud one little preference you normally hold back on every day. This could be as easy as announcing your movie preference instead of saying, I don't care, whatever you want, or giving something specific a compliment instead of giving generic praise. Then follow this up with a week-long need-feeling diary. Whenever you catch yourself feeling irritated, anxious, or withdrawn, record the situation, the emotions that cropped up, and what need may be not being met. This practice of awareness tends to bring out patterns you can deal with more directly. Finally, plan an onion share session with someone you trust. Alternate making 3 revelations of escalating depth. Maybe a piece of information about yourself, followed by an opinion that you possess, then a fear or dream that you bear. Talk about how the experience is and what you learn about calibrating vulnerability. The long-term payoffs from giving permission reach far beyond individual conversations. As you become more comfortable with authentic expression and make space for others to do the same, you'll find yourself less socially anxious and more fully present. People often report a sort of charismatic presence that develops spontaneously when they release censorship and begin speaking clearly and kindly. You'll also cultivate conflict alchemy, the skill of converting potential conflicts into collaborative problem solving. When feelings and needs are stated directly without blame, what could have become a fight is more likely to become an imaginative search for solutions that will work for all. Maybe most importantly, relationships build quicker and more profoundly when permission exists. Trust increases when individuals feel they will get the truth from you instead of comfortable half-truths. Intimacy becomes greater when more of you are present to connect. A 2023 trial of assertiveness intervention proved these gains, as internet-delivered training modules lowered worry and rumination and increased overall well-being in a 6-month follow-up. Permission skills create enduring gains in both relationship quality and personal experience. Giving permission to self and others reclaims relationships from mind-reading and eggshell walking into places of genuine connection and co-creative growth. By building the ability to state needs and feelings in a clear way while establishing safety for others to do so as well, you establish relationships in which no one must sacrifice harmony for honesty. But what do you do when, in spite of your best efforts at clear communication, tensions surface and conflicts arise? In our 4th chapter, we'll examine a potent 2-minute protocol that can put out emotional fires before they burn up hours of your energy and time. You'll learn why your body's response system is the solution to conflicts your mind cannot solve, and how a simple sequence of physical changes can turn fiery arguments into effective conversations. Chapter 4, Cool Conflict. Have you ever been curious why some arguments get settled in minutes while others consume entire nights, leaving both of you drained and resentful? Why other arguments appear to burst into flames from a single spark and then get out of control, burning many times more emotional energy than the original problem ever deserved? The solution is not in the subject of disagreement, but in something much deeper, a subtle mechanism that decides whether tensions are transformed or evaporate. Master this mechanism, and you will revolutionize the way you manage every conflict in your life. Consider your most recent angry argument. How quickly did it escalate from peaceful debate to furious storm? If you're typical, the transition took place with shocking rapidity, perhaps mere seconds from first provocation to maximum deployment. And once activated, logical problem solving probably became all but impossible. This quick escalation is not an accident. It follows predictable patterns based on both our psychological wiring and our physiological responses. Knowing these patterns puts you in the position to break them up before they eat up hours of your time and emotional bandwidth. Let's begin with the psychological aspect. As we discussed in Chapter 1, conversations are transactions between various ego states, parent, adult, and child. When these transactions go smoothly, communication is productive, but some transaction patterns consistently bring on conflict escalation. The most explosive pattern is the cross-transaction, where one individual speaks from critical parent, "You never listen to me," and strikes the other's free child, evoking an emotional counterpunch. "You're always criticizing me." This creates a blame-defense spiral that can quickly get out of hand. Another frequent hot button is when adapted child comes up against controlling parent. One individual's acquiescence or people-pleasing collides with another's hardline expectations. The tension created frequently accumulates in silence until it explodes in unexpected fashion. These psychological dynamics address the content of conflicts, but they don't address fully the intensity or longevity of them. For that, we must grasp what occurs within your body in conflict. When you sense danger, whether physical harm or social rejection, your brain's warning system springs to life. The amygdala, a tiny almond-shaped brain structure deep within your head, initiates a series of physiological events aimed at preparing you for survival. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Stress hormones cascade through your system. Blood supply is diverted away from your prefrontal cortex, your logical thinking area, to systems required for instant reaction. This body-brain hijack occurs in milliseconds, much quicker than you can think. By the time you realize you're feeling triggered, your physiology has already been changed to a defensive state that renders thoughtful response all but impossible. Your body gives early warning signs of this activation if you learn to read them. A clamped jaw, tight shoulders, shallow chest breathing, or a feeling of heat rising in your face all mean that your system is going into defensive mode. These micro-signals precede complete emotional flooding, providing a narrow window to act. This knowledge takes us to a revolutionary realization. Attempting to negotiate angry disagreements by using reason is attempting to extinguish a flame with paper. The same mechanism you require to think logically, your prefrontal cortex, is actually going dark as your body goes into threat response. The answer is not more dialogue. It is a physical reboot that returns your nervous system to a place where constructive conversation again becomes an option. This is the art of cooling conflict, settling the bodily arousal driving escalation before attempting to quell the content of the conflict. Research supports the effectiveness of this technique. A pioneering 2024 study published in The Guardian discovered that couples who inserted a mere 5-second delay between heated exchanges had a 42% reduction in retaliatory comments relative to controls. This small intervention, briefly pausing, substantially minimized conflict escalation. How does such a small change make such a large impact? The pause breaks the automatic response loop, allowing the nervous system time to start to regulate. It's like hitting a reset button on an overheated machine, giving the system time to operate back into function. Based on this realization, it is possible to build a full 2-minute reset procedure that solves conflict at its physiological origins. This 3-step process, pause, breathe, reframe, has the capability to change how you manage differences of opinion in all aspects of your life. Step 1 is the pause, an intentional 5-second silence that breaks the chain reaction of response. When you feel yourself triggered or tension building, just stop. Don't react right away. Don't prepare your counterattack, just wait. This moment of silence is awkward at first. Your instinct will be to fill it, to defend yourself, to counterattack. Fight this temptation. The magic of the pause is exactly that it breaks habitual patterns. For an extra boost for the pause, include a grounding cue, a bodily anchor that lets your body know it is safe. Feel your feet touch the floor. Have a sense of your body resting on the chair or ground underneath you. Relax your eyes slightly, lessening the amount of visual information that can contribute to threat perception. These minute physical adjustments tell your nervous system you're not immediately threatened, initiating the process of shutting down the threat response. They take seconds, but establish the groundwork for all that comes next. Step 2 is controlled breathing. In particular, a 4-count inhale and 6-count exhale pattern. This breathing proportion has been found to maximize heart rate variability, an important marker of nervous system equilibrium. The physiology of this breathing mode is interesting. Your autonomic nervous system has two primary branches: sympathetic, stimulating, and parasympathetic, soothing. The sympathetic branch quickens your heart when you breathe in, and the parasympathetic branch slows it when you breathe out. By lengthening your exhales more than your inhales, you enhance the parasympathetic response, proactively countering stress activation. A 2023 meta-analysis discovered that slow-rate breathing, less than 6 breaths a minute, reliably lowered cortisol and self-reported anxiety. The 4 and 6 out rhythm does precisely the right breathing rate, providing physiological conditions for relaxation, clear thinking. To maximize effect, you may include a soft humming tone on the exhale. This gentle vibration excites the vagus nerve, the central channel of your parasympathetic nervous system. The consequent vagal tone hastens your transition to a state of regulation further. Step 3 is the cognitive reframe, which changes your internal conversation from reactive to responsive. After the pause and the breath have produced physiological space, you can now refocus your thinking to the adult ego state. Ask yourself, what do we both want here? This question shifts you from positional thinking, I must win this debate, to interest-based thinking, what are we really trying to achieve? It engages your prefrontal cortex, getting your rational abilities back online. This internal reframe follow up with an external one. A non-judgmental clarifying question that changes the tone of conversation. Help me see what's most critical to you here. Or, I'm wondering about how this works for you. Invites the other to be with you in adult state problem solving instead of ongoing parent-child conflict. This full 2-minute reset, pause, breathe, reframe, cuts the cycle of conflict at its physiological origin, establishing conditions where constructive conversation is once again possible. It's not about shying away from tough issues, it's about working on them from a regulated state instead of a reactive one. To add to this foundational protocol, you can include somatic de-escalation tools that further change your body state. Open posture exercises undo the defensive body positioning that tends to come with conflict. Roll your shoulders back and down, so your chest can open. Face your palms outward or up in a posture of receptivity instead of defense. A study published in 2024 determined that taking open upright postures when doing cognitive restructuring decreased negative affect by 24% and increased problem-solving scores. Your body position doesn't just express your internal state, it helps create it. Anchoring gestures provide additional regulation support during challenging conversations. The hand-on-heart technique, simply placing your palm over your heart area, activates self-compassion networks in the brain while providing tactile reassurance. A 2024 somatic exercise review confirmed that such practices significantly reduced perceived stress and improved emotional resilience. For ongoing regulation, consider using a tactile object, a smooth stone in your pocket, a textured ring, or a worry bead as a physical reset cue. Touching this object during tense moments creates a pattern interrupt that reminds your system to return to regulation. Once your physiology shifts toward regulation, specific language patterns can help maintain the cooler conflict temperature. Adult state sentence starters offer easy-to-use templates for de-escalated communication. I'm noticing points attention to things we can see instead of judgments or accusations. I'm curious about shows interest instead of insistence. Help me understand invites collaboration instead of obedience. What outcome are we both seeking reorients towards shared goals? These verbal frames maintain the conversation in adult-adult transaction patterns, lowering the risk of triggering parent-child dynamics that feed escalation. Tone and tempo modifications further chill conflict heat. The slow 10% rule recommends slowing your speech rate by only 10% during confrontational interactions. A modification subtle enough to apply, yet large enough to alter emotional tone. Volume control is also crucial. Research repeatedly demonstrates an inverse correlation between volume and perceived trustworthiness. As voice volume rises, perceived trust falls. By intentionally reducing your volume a notch when tensions build, you establish a paradoxical effect in which you're actually heard more clearly just because you're talking softly. As with any skill, conflict cooling needs to be practiced to become proficient. Start with low-stakes practice, role-playing minor disagreements with a cooperative partner, and work on carrying out the reset protocol smoothly. Practice timing yourself, trying to get through the entire sequence within 120 seconds or less. Once you're familiar with the basics, choose a common friction point in your actual relationships, like a household chore that consistently creates stress or a communication pattern that generally gets heated. Use the reset protocol the next time this issue comes up, then write in a journal about what happened. What was successful? What was difficult? How was the conversation different from prior patterns? To construct this ability into your nervous system, attempt the 2-minute timer challenge. Repeat the complete reset process 3 times a day for a week, whether you feel like it or not, even if you're not in conflict. Repeating the process establishes neural pathways that allow the reset to be readily available in real tension. The body map reflection exercise increases your somatic awareness. On a plain outline sketch of a human form, identify where you usually feel tension in conflict. Maybe your jaw, shoulders, chest, or stomach. After you've done the reset protocol, observe how these patterns of tension change. This visual mapping is how you learn your individual activation signatures sooner so they don't build up to full-blown conflict. For more advanced learning, do a conflict audit for a week. Monitor 3 actual disagreements, observing what trigger caused tension, which reset steps you took, and the outcome. This systematic observation speeds up your learning curve by unveiling patterns unique to your conflict style. The long-term dividends of becoming proficient in conflict cooling reach far beyond isolated disagreements. Most useful, perhaps, is the time regained from wasted escalation. Conflicts that had monopolized entire evenings are settled in minutes when waged from a state of regulation, leaving your time and energy for greater satisfaction. Relationships receive a trust dividend as partners feel greater safety and vulnerability. When others know you can remain regulated in times of challenge, they're more likely to raise issues early on instead of putting them off until they become huge problems. This openness avoids the buildup of unresolved tensions that erode connection. Your own emotional resilience benefits too. Consistent practice of the reset protocol builds vagal tone, your nervous system's capacity to return to baseline following activation. This provides a more relaxed default state that serves every aspect of your life, from the quality of sleep to creative cognition. A 2025 heart rate variability biofeedback study verified these outcomes, demonstrating that rapid coherence training, like our breathing protocol, increased psychophysiological coherence and reduced stress levels after only a 5-minute exercise. These gains increased over time, establishing permanent enhancements in emotional control. Healthcare professionals have recognized the value of these approaches. A 2024 de-escalation training intervention found that staff who completed a 2-hour somatic de-escalation workshop resolved patient conflicts 19% faster than before training. The same principles that work in personal relationships prove effective in professional contexts as well. The elegance of the conflict cooling method is that it is accessible. You do not require special equipment, advanced training, or the agreement of the other party to start working these methods. A unilateral change in your physiology tends to induce a similar change in the overall interaction, even if others are not consciously aware of it. It is not about controlling others. It is about establishing conditions under which real communication can occur. By working with the physiological roots of conflict escalation, you make room for genuine connection and problem solving that works for everyone. Cooling conflict is not about evading hard issues or denying your needs. Quite the opposite, it opens the door to more straightforward, honest communication by taking out the emotional reactivity that usually takes over meaningful conversations. When both individuals are physiologically safe, they can confront hard issues with clarity and respect. The next time tension is building during a conversation, recall, transformation lies in the body. Taking a moment of pause, controlled breathing, and mental reframing can redirect the entire course of the interaction. This simple string of actions upsets the patterns of automatic escalation that have sabotaged so many conversations throughout history. Through practice, you will get an intuitive feel for the earliest signs of conflict escalation, in yourself as well as in others. You'll intercept the micro moments in which intervention will work best before emotional flooding reaches full force. And you'll build the ability to stay at your center when being around other people's reactivity. What do you do when the dialogue extends beyond tension building? How do you maintain interest after you've cooled the immediate dispute? In our next chapter, we'll discover the art of igniting curiosity, turning routine interactions into avenues of discovery and connection. You'll see why some patterns of conversation reliably build energy and interest, while others predictably drain them, and how one subtle change in your style can turn even the most ordinary interactions into portals to greater understanding. Chapter 5: Ignite Curiosity. Have you ever observed how some discussions take off while others refuse to get beyond the ground? You've likely had both happen to you. The conversation which starts out with usual pleasantries, yet somehow manages to become an unforgettable bond, and the conversation that refuses to budge from the superficial shore, causing both people to glance at their watches and look for the door. Why does it happen? What unseen energy sends some conversations soaring while others stay grounded? The secret is in a trait that's ingrained in our species but too often sleeping in our everyday interactions. It was a trait that once kept our forefathers alive by venturing into new lands and knowing possible allies or dangers. Now, it is still one of our strongest social assets when we learn to switch it on. Reflect on your last social encounters. Did you go to a party and get to know some new people, or have a video conference with coworkers, or chat with friends? In how many of those conversations did you end up being genuinely energized afterward? How many made you feel more connected than just having fulfilled a social obligation? If you're like most people, genuinely energizing conversations are the exception, not the rule. Most conversations go through predictable scripts that neither challenge nor delight us. We ask the same questions. What do you do? How's work? Provide the same responses and ask yourself why genuine connection is so out of reach. The issue isn't a shortage of social ability. It's a loss of the mechanism that drives meaningful human interaction. When this engine sputters, talk becomes mechanical information exchange instead of discovery and bonding opportunities. To see why this occurs, we must look at the typical patterns that make small talk stall. The most glaring offender is predictable scripting. Those over-rehearsed openers and canned lines we've all used a million times. What do you do? How was your weekend? Nice weather we're having. Such questions are not really bad, but they tend to elicit similarly routine answers that do not much betray the individual who wears the social cloak. Such predictability is partly a result of social risk aversion, the instinctive desire to eschew rejection or judgment by honoring safe subjects. We unconsciously read for status cues and vary our talk to accommodate, tending to favor impression management over genuine interchange. The outcome is a huge energy and attention drain. The mental load of ongoing self-monitoring, whether we're saying the right thing, whether we're being judged, whether we're making proper eye contact, leaves us with little mental space for actual curiosity about the other person. We're so concerned with our own performance that we miss out on moments of real connection. Finally, topic death signals appear, the subtle signs that a conversation has flatlined. A monotone voice, diverted eyes, shorter answers, the gradual physical withdrawal. Both of them sense the energy dip, but usually don't have the means to bring it back. So they uncomfortably struggle through until escape is within reach. But what if you were able to turn those interactions around? What if you had a surefire technique for injecting life into any conversation and making real connection with anyone, even strangers? This turnaround starts by grasping something psychologists refer to as positivity resonance, those tiny moments of mutual positive emotion that synchronize people. It has been found that improved listening behaviors had a large effect on mutual positive effect and safety and experience in first-time conversations in 2023. When individuals share these short synchronized affect states, trust increases and connection develops. You can consciously build positivity resonance using easy behaviors that get overlooked most of the time. True eye crinkle smiles, the kind that involve muscles around your eyes, not only your mouth, indicate genuine positive feeling. Mirror nodding, duplicating the other person's head movements as they speak, creates minute physical synchrony that increases rapport. For a rapid mood booster, attempt the yes and riff. A technique pinched from improv comedy where you accept what you are given and expand on it. When a person says they loved a recent concert, rather than just agreeing and dropping it, you could say, "Yes, and I'll bet the live performance added an entirely new dimension to the music." This 40-second pattern of exchange builds a coactive energy boost that makes the whole conversation better. These shared positive feelings build more than good vibes. They initiate physiological coactivation in which your nervous systems actually harmonize. Studies indicate that when people are having engaging conversations, their heart rates tend to match, providing a biological foundation for the sensation of clicking with another person. You can intentionally induce this synchrony through timely humor or by experiencing light awe moments, experiences that broaden perspective and inspire wonder. A review in 2024 discovered that awe experiences consistently boosted prosocial intentions and collective identity in 22 studies. Sharing an interesting fact, a creative idea, or just a beautiful photo can have this impact. Positivity in and of itself, however, is not enough to keep the conversation going. To that, you must engage the curiosity engine, the motivation to learn what makes someone interesting and special. A 2024 survey discovered that high interpersonal curiosity levels led to a 29% boost in feelings of belonging in only a 10-minute conversation. When individuals feel that you have a sincere interest in learning about who they are, connection happens naturally. The trick is to ask questions that generate open loops, not closed endpoints. Instead of, "Did you like the conference?" which gets a yes, no answer. Try, "What surprised you most about the conference?" This open loop method invites elaboration, not closure. To prevent an interrogation atmosphere, use a rhythm of ask, think for a moment, then open up. After posing a question, think of an answer for a second. That's like amazing how you found the technical sessions most helpful. Then open up with an analogous thought or follow-up query. This generates a conversational dance instead of an interview type of situation. Some question stems consistently elicit more engaging responses. What took you by surprise? What's the background to? What's proven most difficult so far? What are you wondering about recently? These types of questions welcome individuals beyond the domain of memorized answers into deeper reflection. Good questions notwithstanding, active listening cues dictate whether individuals feel really heard. Verbal nods, "That's intriguing. I can envision that was tough. That's an insightful perspective," signal that you're completely engaged. Minimal encouragers such as aha, slight nods, and angling in very slightly all convey ongoing interest without breaking the speaker's rhythm. The evidence on this is persuasive. A 2023 American Psychological Association review found asking questions which demonstrate listening to be the single strongest predictor of good post-conversation mood. They don't merely want to be heard, they want to have evidence that what they've told you has registered with you. This leads us to arguably the most underappreciated conversation skill, follow-up question mastery. A 2023 replication study discovered that participants who were asked more follow-up questions rated their conversation partners as significantly more likable and were twice as likely to desire future interaction. Follow-up questions show that you're not merely going through a mental checklist of typical questions, but actually engaging with what's being said. The best method is the echo and dig technique. Rephrasing an important phrase from the individual's answer, and then questioning it more deeply. If an individual states they like taking photos as a hobby, you could repeat, "Photography is significant to you," then probe further. What is it about taking photos that appeals to you compared to merely living through moments? To create the greatest connection, use the 3-layer rule. Moving from fact, to emotion, to significance. Begin with factual questions regarding the subject. Next, delve into how they feel about it. And lastly, ask about what it means to them or what they have learned from it. This direction naturally goes deeper without imposing wrong intimacy. Timing and tone also play a big role in how follow-up questions are taken. A 2-second hesitation after someone has spoken indicates you're considering their words instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Employing rising intonation only when you're genuinely interested instead of as a speech habit demonstrates genuine curiosity. As conversations unfold, the sharing of personal stories, or what we can refer to as story swaps, provide some of the greatest connection options. According to a 2024 Forbes report, narrative interactions in which both parties took turns being storyteller and listener enhanced perceived trust by 23%. Stories tell us about values, viewpoints, and experiences in a way direct statements usually do not. For effective personal anecdote telling, stick to a basic formula. Context, challenge, insight, punchline. Start with as little background as possible. Describe a challenge or a turning point. Explain what you learned or realized, and conclude with a recollection that lingers. Limiting the first shares to 90 seconds prevents dominating conversation time while continuing to share something useful. During the listening phase for other stories, do not problem solve or attempt to outdo them with a comparable story. Reflect the feeling that they have just shared. That is just really frustrating. And shine the spotlight on them as the hero of their story through questions like, what did this experience teach you? Or how did having that experience shift your point of view? Humor is another strong people bridge builder, particularly when referencing common cultural touchstones. A study in 2025 discovered that laughing together over sharing funny memes increased emotional excitement and social validation over non-humor controls. In text communications, timed well GIFs or memes can build connection through shared laughter. The trick is discovering humor that builds connections and does not isolate. Gentle, inclusive humor builds bridges, while sarcasm often creates distance. The tag team tease, where two people playfully build on each other's humor, creates particularly strong bonding, provided it's good-natured rather than cutting. To implement these principles in everyday life, consider creating a personal bridge prompt deck. A mental collection of conversation starters organized into categories that reliably create connection. Tiny triumphs prompts invite people to share recent small wins or moments of satisfaction. Hidden passions questions ask about interests individuals rarely get to talk about. Future hopes questions open doors into dreams and hopes. Experiment with the 48-hour prompt challenge. Try using 3 distinct bridge questions with 3 distinct individuals in the next 2 days, then compare how the depth of conversation changed in comparison to your normal conversations. This easy experiment will often demonstrate how rapidly the quality of conversation can increase when provided with a proper foundation. For regular practice, keep a curiosity log where you write down the most fascinating thing you learned from 5 new people every day. This practice trains your focus to seek what's intriguing about others instead of impression management or social duty. The follow-up drill gives you formal practice with a willing partner. Take turns telling something about yourselves, then practice the 3-layer follow-up technique. Fact, feeling, meaning, providing feedback later on what questions built the most connection. For an even more engaging experience, take the awe walk. A 10-minute walk outside where you consciously seek out something that induces wonder or broadens your outlook. Hold this moment in mind or take a photo, and then discuss it with someone using a bridge prompt. This bridges the connection-building ability of awe with the organized strategy of curiosity prompts. The long-term benefits of learning to facilitate curiosity-driven conversation encompass far more than more enjoyable social gatherings. Individuals who learn these skills generally experience an expanded social circle as the conversations are more effortless and strangers more easily become allies and friends. More intimate connections occur as common stories foster immediate intimacy. The general mood lifts with positivity resonance, producing more frequent moments of connection and happiness. A 2024 study connected high-trait curiosity to increased life satisfaction and improved memory recall, implying that encouraging curiosity is good not only for your social life, but also for your well-being and mental function. The interest in other people's affairs develops a self-reinforcing loop of richer interaction and broadened outlook. Perhaps most significant, curiosity-motivated conversation reorients the whole social interaction experience from drain to recharge. Instead of leaving interactions drained from self-monitoring and impression management, you leave feeling invigorated by discovery and connection. Such transformation does not demand exceptional social skills or a naturally extroverted personality type. It demands only to be redirected away from self to other, away from performance to obligation, away from obligation to opportunity. The most charismatic individuals are not the most accomplished or the most clever with words. They are those who make others feel interesting, worthy, and heard. By building your ability to inspire curiosity in yourself and others, you reshape the topography of your daily interactions. Everyday encounters become experiences of discovery. Small talk is a portal to deep connection, and the walls that stand between individuals start breaking down, and you see the interesting complexity present in each individual you encounter. The next time you are in a conversation that is proceeding according to the book, experiment with engaging one of these methods. Ask an open-loop question. Parrot and probe deeper into something they've said. Offer up a short personal story that exposes something more than your social mask. You'll probably be amazed at how rapidly the energy changes. But what if those enriched dialogues result in agreements, plans, or commitments? How do you make sure that the bonding you've established yields clear understanding and mutual satisfaction? In our next chapter, we shall discover the invisible contracts that underlie all relationships and learn how making them conscious turns fuzzy assumptions into concrete agreements. You'll discover why most disappointments stem not from bad intentions, but from a subtle psychological bias that few people recognize in themselves, and how a simple practice can neutralize its effects before damage occurs. Chapter 6: Clear Contracts. Have you ever been blindsided by someone's disappointment in you? That feeling when they're obviously upset, but you didn't realize that you'd breached an expectation that you never realized existed? Or maybe you ended up becoming angrier and more resentful towards someone who apparently is unaware of what you believe are their plain obligations. These hurtful misconnections occur a lot more times than we would like to own up to. They generate a strange kind of relationship tension. One in which each is really hurt, but neither of them can quite explain why. One of them is thinking, how could they not have recognized that this mattered to me? While the other is thinking, how was I ever supposed to know what they were thinking? What underlies these mismatches is a phenomenon that quietly influences almost all of our relationships, but far too infrequently does it get the consideration it deserves. It works under the radar of our everyday interactions, forming unseen expectations and implicit commitments that we're only aware of when they're violated. It permeates all of life, from how chores are allocated in the home, to how plans are made with friends, to how coworkers work together on projects. It shapes who pays for what, who calls whom, who marks whose birthday, who brings up the tough issues, and scores of other relationship phenomena. What makes this force so dominant and so pesky is that it works mainly outside of our conscious minds. We create expectations about how things should be without ever consciously articulating them, then get resentful when other people don't have those assumptions. Meanwhile, they're working from their own set of unwritten assumptions, equally certain their perspective is obvious. The outcome is a sort of relationship minefield in which misunderstandings and disappointments can detonate at random. More bewildering, this usually happens within otherwise healthy relationships between well-meaning individuals who actually care about one another. So what is this secret force and why does it cause such intractable difficulties? The explanation is found in what psychologists term psychological contracts, the unspoken unwritten deals that underlie our relationships. In contrast to formal agreements with clear terms, psychological contracts are made up of implicit assumptions regarding what each side will contribute and receive. They develop automatically as relationships grow, influenced by cultural expectations, family dynamics, past experience, and offhand remarks that become grossly magnified. A 2023 study on student-teacher relationships determined that broken implicit promises were responsible for 31% of conflict events. Almost a third of all relationship tension arose out of never expressed expectations. The pattern occurs in every type of relationship, from romantic partnerships to friendships to work partnerships. The issue isn't that these agreements do exist. They're a necessary byproduct of human interaction. The issue is that they go unseen, unchecked, and unreaffirmed until they're broken. We think other people share our model of how the world works without ever verifying if that's the case. That leads to a perfect storm when compounded with two incredibly strong cognitive biases that inform the way we approach agreements and expectations. The first is loss aversion. Our inclination to experience the loss of something about twice as much as the pleasure of acquiring something similar. A 2024 Forbes article discusses how this 2-to-1 ratio of pain impacts daily choices, such as negotiations in relationships. When we feel like we're losing an inferred benefit, even though it was never clearly guaranteed, it is a perceived great loss. This makes us reluctant to renegotiate arrangements even when they're causing problems because any change feels like surrendering something valuable. The second bias is status quo preference. Our tendency to prefer existing arrangements simply because they're familiar, even when alternatives might serve us better. A February 2024 paper emphasized how this cognitive inertia causes individuals to oppose new systems even when they would cut effort, echoing how couples tend to hold on to dysfunctional routines instead of making clearer agreements. In combination, these biases form a strong inertia that ensures secret contracts remain secret and dysfunctional arrangements remain in place. We'd rather accept continuous frustration than endure the agony of uncovering assumptions and negotiating overt terms. The devil we know is less frightening than the unknown of change, even if the devil we know is torturing us. This is reinforced also by what Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman terms noise. The random variation in judgments that are supposed to be the same. In a 2024 interview, Kahneman explained how this noise wreaks havoc on decision-making, causing people to reach different conclusions from the same information depending on irrelevant factors like their mood, the time of day, or recent experiences. In relationships, this noise manifests as inconsistent expectations and evaluations. One day, you might be unbothered by your roommate leaving dishes in the sink. The following day, the same action is experienced as an egregious offense. Such inconsistency makes it even more challenging to create discernible agreements since goalposts appear to move in ways that cannot be anticipated. The combined effect of these psychological mechanisms, tacit contracts, loss aversion, status quo bias, and noisy judgment is a relationship terrain characterized by implicit expectations, mismatched assumptions, and occasional outbursts of resentment or disappointment. Even great communicators in other areas tend to struggle with this issue. What if you were able to shift this dynamic? What if you were able to bring those tacit deals out of the shadows, review them impartially, and turn them into transparent agreements that both parties truly get and agree to? This process starts with the development of skills to recognize unspoken deals that already exist in your relationships. These unwritten promises come in numerous forms, but some patterns are repeated in every type of relationship. In friendships, some common unwritten contracts include reciprocity expectations. I hear your issues, so you must hear mine. Being loyal. You shouldn't become friends with people I don't like. An investment of effort. I make plans, so you must do it sometimes too. In families, they often center on roles. As the oldest, you should set an example, traditions, everyone attends holiday gatherings, and support levels. Parents should help financially when needed. In romantic relationships, they frequently involve time allocation. Weekends are for us, emotional labor, you should know when I'm upset without me saying so, and future commitments. This relationship is heading toward marriage. What makes these contracts particularly sticky is that they often provide emotional payoffs beyond their practical function. Fulfilling an unspoken expectation might bring guilt relief. I've done my duty, status boost, I'm the responsible one, or identity reinforcement. This proves I'm a good partner. These emotional rewards make us even more resistant to examining and potentially changing the underlying agreements. Loss aversion also makes renegotiation difficult since letting go even of the potential for a gain feels like a loss of something certain. If you've taken for granted that your partner will always take care of some specific task, negotiating a more equitable division seems like a loss of an assured service, even if it never was promised explicitly. This is why individuals tend to overreact to proposed shifts in relationship dynamics. They're suffering the psychological anguish of perceived loss. The secret to transcending this resistance is to redefine renegotiation as gain-seeking instead of loss-accepting. Rather than concentrating on what you may lose in a clearer agreement, focus directly on what everyone wins: less resentment, greater trust, more dependable outcomes, and the satisfaction of arrangements that really work for all concerned. Reframing is simplified when you can chart the status quo triggers sustaining troublesome patterns. Frequently, too, the reliability of routine overshadows worries regarding fairness or utility. We repeat unfair divisions of labor, not because we consider them fair, but because they're predictable and familiar. Default effect, the tendency to abide by pre-chosen options, works its influence extensively, from division of household responsibilities to financial structure. By seeing these patterns of bias, you are better able to engage in agreement making more self-awarely. Instead of letting psychological forces dictate terms in your relationships, you can apply Kahneman's term, decision hygiene, systematic processes that minimize noise and enhance the quality of judgment. One straightforward hygiene practice is separate idea listing prior to discussion. When considering a joint decision or agreement, get each party to write out what they think first, independent of the others, before trading notes. This prevents the initial speaker from anchoring the discussion and makes all opinions receive equal thought. Likewise, basic weighting schemes can pierce the arbitrary fluctuation in how we appraise choices. When you're debating how to do something you'll be doing jointly, each might score possible arrangements on attributes such as fairness, effectiveness, and individual preference with the same scale. This organized process limits the impact of fleeting moods or last-minute events on key decisions. With these basic observations under your belt, you can then start to turn secret contracts into open agreements with the aid of a straightforward yet mighty instrument, the 3-column worksheet. This process puts tacit expectations on explicit terms by using a formal process of reflection and negotiation. On the first column, I assume, individuals write down what are their current beliefs concerning the arrangement at hand. Who does what? Who makes what decisions? Who is accountable for what? On the second column, they list what really matters to them concerning this domain, their underlying needs, not particular implementation wishes. In the third column, they work together in an agreement on explicit terms, to both of whom and their needs they commit themselves, discarding troublesome presuppositions. Such works for every sort of agreement, from plans for weekends through money lending limits to shared uses of resources. What is involved is a step away from assumptions based on something that is only inferred to understanding that is expressible. The success of this strategy relies in part on knowing the social value orientation of all parties. A study published in PLOS I in 2024 revealed that prosocial people, those who have a natural inclination towards prioritizing collective outcomes, experience greater perceived contract fairness and relationship quality than those with more individualistic orientations. These various orientations call for various negotiation strategies. Pro-social people are responsive to focus on mutual gain and relationship harmony. More individualistic persons might require stronger emphasis on personal benefits and clear reciprocity. By matching the other person's orientation with your tone and frame, you're more likely to make deals that are satisfying to both parties. After you've got clear terms, pre-commitment devices ensure steady follow-through. These tools create intention-supporting structure that avoids the gap between what we do when we promise to do something and what we end up doing when emotions or other priorities get in the way. Bright lines and deadlines set clear boundaries that decrease decision fatigue and minimize differences in interpretation. Calendar reminders for periodic check-ins, expense limits for joint expenditures, or scheduled device-free periods are some bright-line agreements that do not provide much scope for misunderstanding. For added responsibility, use stakes that work with loss aversion to the benefit. The double or donate strategy produces effects for violating agreements. When you violate the conditions, you double your contribution to a common cause or donate to something you care about. This turns the vague cost of violating an agreement into a tangible consequence that encourages follow-through. Defaults in behavior add extra strength to follow-through by altering the line of least resistance. Think of the difference between opt-out versus opt-in arrangements for repeated duties. An opt-out system presumes participation unless one actively excludes themselves, whereas an opt-in system demands active affirmation every time. The default usually wins, so carefully crafting defaults can have a profound impact on behavior patterns. Occasionally, you wish to add friction to deter certain behavior. At other times, you wish to eliminate friction to facilitate follow-through. For instance, you could introduce friction to impulse decisions by imposing a 24-hour consideration period and take friction out of routine communication by making a weekly check-in not require special scheduling. Even ideal deals involve keeping trust alive continuously and updating it from time to time. A 2024 Epistemic Trust Review, which listed the extent to which we are willing to accept new information from others, found 3 important signals that raise trust levels in deals. Consistency, dependable follow-through, competence, capability to perform commitments, and benevolence, good intent toward the other person. Periodic micro-rituals reaffirm these trust indicators. A weekly 5-minute check-in allows room for recognizing what is working and tackling small problems before they escalate. Quick restore practices, easy means to recover after minor conflicts, avoid agreement breakdowns from deteriorating into relationship breaks. To sustain longer term, incorporate revision clauses into agreements. A monthly retro meeting on contract creates room to check in on how arrangements are going and adapt as necessary. Having elegant exit language for obsolete terms facilitates it to transition agreements as situations evolve, minimizing the inclination to hold on to arrangements that are no longer fulfilling their intention. To start applying these principles today, experiment with the expectation audit exercise. Find one implicit agreement in 3 various relationships, then make each explicit in terms through direct discussion. This simple exercise usually uncovers astonishing misalignments and brings instant clarity. Follow up with a trial of decision hygiene on your next joint purchase or decision. Utilize structured criteria weighting to minimize noise and ensure you're considering options consistently instead of being influenced by transient considerations. For a longer practice, create a bright line commitment with an accountability partner and monitor compliance for 2 weeks. This experience builds your ability to establish and keep clear agreements with immediate feedback of what works in your particular context. The long-term payoff of learning clear contracts far outlasts mitigating particular misunderstandings. Of perhaps greatest value is the extraordinary decrease in resentment that results from removing assumed debt scorekeeping. The mental calculating of perceived responsibility that produces an ever-present underlying tension in numerous relationships. Decision-making speeds up as well. When expectations and preferences are made clear, you waste less time in circular dialogue attempting to figure out what you actually want or what would actually be good for you. This efficiency leaves room for connection and enjoyment instead of negotiation and explanation. Perhaps most importantly, clear, renegotiable agreements have a compounding effect on trust. Every commitment honored generates confidence in subsequent agreements. Each effective renegotiation illustrates that change need not imperil the relationship. This gradually establishes a groundwork of trust and respect that fortifies every facet of the relationship. A 2024 study testing relationship quality under varying agreement types verified this phenomenon, discovering that couples with articulative agreements tested vastly higher on trust, communication, and equity scales than those that operated mostly on implicit understanding. The lucidity itself turned out to be a relationship investment, regardless of the exact terms made. By making underlying contracts explicit and turning them into transparent agreements, you shift the very dynamics of your relationships. Expectations are choices instead of assumptions. Disappointments become chances for clarity instead of proof of failure. And the subtle minefield of unwritten rules becomes a plain path that each party can tread with confidence. But even with the most explicit commitments, we sometimes seem to remain entrenched in patterns that feel impossible to shift. Our own internal stories, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we can do, can sabotage our finest efforts at change. In our next chapter, we'll see how these self-stories construct your social reality and how rewriting them opens up possibilities you may never have dreamed of. You'll learn why the most effective change is often initiated not by what you do, but by something much more fundamental that most folks never even think to question. Chapter 7, Rewrite Story. What if the biggest hurdle to your social success is not others' behavior, but something much more intimate and stronger? Something so close to you that you've never even considered questioning it, but it dictates the way you act with everyone you meet. Consider how you self-describe when meeting a new person. What adjectives pop into your head? I'm an introvert. I'm horrible with names. I always put other people first. I don't do confrontation. These innocuous-sounding self-descriptions can sound like neutral facts about who you are. But suppose they are something else in disguise. These self-labels aren't so much descriptions, they're prescriptions. They don't merely describe your reality, they produce it. Every time you call up one of these identity labels, you're not only defining your past actions, you're programming your future. You're instructing your brain, this is who I am, so this is how I have to act. A remarkable 2025 experiment was able to show this effect in startling detail. Participants were given random identity labels from an algorithm. Those who were labeled as being environmentally aware would then make greener choices. Those labeled as impulsive decision makers made quicker, less thoughtful choices. These weren't existing traits. They were manufactured labels, yet, they had a huge effect on behavior, often unbeknownst to participants. This effect, which we might term label lock-in, runs in the background of your social life. The narratives you tell about your own self become self-fulfilling prophecies, directing your behavior toward alignment with your constructed narrative. You can see how this plays out in day-to-day decisions. If your identity story involves, "I'm not good at meeting new people," you'll find yourself avoiding situations that threaten this narrative. When coerced into social interactions, you'll experience each cringeworthy moment in isolation while looking over successful exchanges, confirming your initial story with confirmation bias. This selective attention builds a strong feedback loop over time that seems like evidence of your inherent qualities when it is actually proof of the power of your story to construct your reality. Even more restrictive are so-called problem-saturated narratives, stories that identify you mainly by your failures or weaknesses. I'm the one who always gets ignored. I never say the right thing. I always draw the wrong people. These stories have a focusing effect on failures, drawing your attention to evidence that supports these limiting stories and excluding contradictory information. The effective price of these problem-saturated stories is great. They can result in learned helplessness. The notion that you have limited control over significant events in your life. When your story puts you in the role of a victim of circumstance or innate deficiency, your incentive to try and change accordingly weakens. Why bother if failure is in your nature? A 2024 9-year longitudinal study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology confirmed the impact of these narrative patterns. Researchers found that the coherence and emotional tone of people's life stories predicted their depression trajectories over nearly a decade. Those with more positive, meaning-focused narratives showed steeper declines in depressive symptoms over time, even when controlling for external circumstances. But if narratives can bind us, they can also set us free. The same psychological forces that trap us in restrictive narratives can be channeled into the production of expansive, empowering selves. It is here that the art of rewriting one's story becomes a transformative practice. To rewrite your narrative successfully, you must first know the anatomy of narrative identity. How are personal stories put together, and how do they work psychologically? All identity stories carry a temporal axis, linking experiences in the past to your current understanding of self and forward to a hoped-for future. The past, present, future continuum establishes continuity and meaning, making sense of your life as an integrated path, not as an accumulation of unconnected events. In this timeline, some experiences are particularly significant turning points. Places where your trajectory changed in lasting ways. How you understand these turning points deeply determines the overall story. Do you understand them as random chance events, harsh developments, or purposeful possibilities for growth and realignment? Psychologists recognize two general patterns in the ways individuals incorporate challenging events into their life narratives. Redemptive sequences turn bad things into sparks for good change. That rejection made me realize my real passion. Contamination sequences have the opposite effect, showing good things to be ultimately spoiled by later issues. I finally got a wonderful relationship, but then I ruined it like I always do. Studies repeatedly demonstrate that individuals who create redemptive stories, discovering meaning and development in challenging situations, have greater well-being and exhibit more resilience when confronted with new adversity. A 2024 meta-analysis of narrative therapy interventions identified medium-sized reductions in depressive symptoms, Hedges G0.55, following 8 weeks of guided narrative work, emphasizing the clinical importance of revising story. Your own story gives roles to you and others. Are you the hero of your own story, seeking purposeful goals in the face of adversity? The victim of events outside your control? Sidekick to someone else's adventure? The mentor who assists others but ignores your own path? These role assignments strongly impact how you navigate relationships and obstacles. With this knowledge of narrative structure, you can start the process of revision with evidence-based reauthoring tools. One of the most effective methods comes from narrative therapy. Externalizing the problem. This method generates space between you and the patterns that restrict you. Moving away from "I am the problem" to "the problem is the problem." Rather than stating that I'm socially awkward, you can label the awkwardness as something that you sometimes experience as an external energy affecting your interactions. This slight realignment generates space for agency. You can now witness, comprehend and respond to this pattern instead of being it. To probe this externalization further, have a go at the dialogue method. Interview the pattern as though it were a distinct entity. When did you first come into my life? Embarrassment. What circumstances make you become more powerful? What are you attempting to keep me safe from? How do you restrict me? This shift in perspective tends to make you realize things about the pattern's origins and uses that weren't apparent when you perceived it as an inextricable aspect of your identity. Self-distanced expressive writing, a 2024 study, exemplifies this method by discovering that writing about difficulties in the third person reduced physiological stress reactions during after-the-fact reflection. Psychological distance from difficulty permits more adaptive processing and meaning-making. After you've externalized limiting patterns, you can start actively editing your story through a structured script. Begin with the facts of what occurred, recognize the feelings the experience evoked, then consciously create a growth-oriented meaning. For instance, I froze during the presentation. Fact. I felt embarrassed and disappointed in myself. Feeling. This exercise taught me where I require more practice and preparation to further grow as a communicator. Try out your reframes with the 2-sentence challenge. Can you capture the new meaning of a challenging experience in only 2 sentences? This limit enforces brevity and stifles rumination masked as reflection. That rejection also taught me how valuable authentic connection is. I now know when I'm overdoing it with trying to impress instead of really connecting. While reworking previous stories is empowering, just as important is writing a good future story. The best possible self-letter is an evidence-based technique that increases optimism and motivation. Envision yourself 3 years in the future having overcome present struggles and made great strides toward your aspirations. Write a formal letter from this future self, telling me about what my life is like, how I conquered challenges, and what I have learned. A 2025 trial established that this intervention increased positive effect by 0.42 standard deviations in adolescents with gains maintained at 4-week follow-up. The secret to optimal impact is to incorporate sensory anchors for vividness. Specific vivid details of what you see, hear, feel, and know in this desirable future. These sensory details make the future self more tangible and real, making its motivational power stronger. Memory is also important in narrative revision. A 2023 study showed that recalling positive autobiographical memories suppressed physiological stress responses more than neutral memories. This implies that intentionally cultivating positive recall can develop resilience against present and future stressors. The 3 proud moments replay is an easy practice that capitalizes on this finding. Revisit 3 times a week 3 experiences in which you exhibited qualities you admire. Courage, compassion, creativity, perseverance, or whatever is of ultimate importance to you. Max out the impact by assuming the physical state that went along with these pleasant memories, taking on the posture, breathing, and facial expression you assumed during those pleasant occasions. For daily narrative repair, cognitive reappraisal provides a valuable tool. It entails deliberately shifting the way you construe experiences, especially difficult ones. A 2024 meta-analysis of 82 studies revealed that reappraisal ability was significantly associated with lower stress, R=1 is 38, and greater resilience, R=0.41, affirming its worth for psychological health. The method works in 3 steps. Name the emotion you're feeling. Find the meaning or interpretation that is creating that emotion. Then consciously step back and look at what else might be going on. This is a skill that is most effectively learned by practicing it on small annoyances before using it with serious problems. Every small reappraisal builds your ability to reframe in the moment. As you revise your story, it's helpful to think about the idea of identity capital, the collection of personal assets that shape who you are and what you bring to social interactions. These assets include your skills, knowledge, credentials, relationships, values, and personal traits. Much like financial capital, the investments you make in your identity grow over time, building a broader portfolio of resources you can rely on in different situations. Start with an asset list, documenting your existing identity capital by category, skills you have accumulated, networks you have established, and credos, personal values and principles you adhere to. The list will typically disclose more resources than you had imagined and indicate places where you need to strategically invest. Have a compound interest attitude towards developing identity, knowing that small, steady investments pay enormous dividends over the long term. A daily 15-minute practice in a new skill area might seem insignificant in isolation, but accumulated over months or years, it transforms your capabilities and, consequently, your story about what's possible for you. To align your daily choices with your desired future identity, focus on 1-degree shifts, tiny adjustments that are sustainable but meaningful. If you want to become more socially confident, a 1-degree change may be starting one small conversation with a stranger each day, instead of trying to become the life of every party right away. Accompany these changes with environmental cues that support your new identity. Physical reminders, computer wallpapers, purposeful placement of objects. These external signals bridge the space between your existing self-concept and the new identity you're creating. They provide persistent subtle nudges in response story-appropriate behavior. For an integrated framework that incorporates these different approaches, think about using the dual hero's journey model. Made famous by mythologist Joseph Campbell and translated by psychologists, this model reimagines personal growth as an epic journey instead of a problem-solving activity. A 2023 study discovered that living life as a narrative arc with this format increased meaning in life scores by 18% in only 2 weeks. The adventure starts with the call to adventure, a challenge, opportunity, or inner discontent that indicates the need for transformation. Discovering how to recognize these nudges or itches in your life enables you to respond knowingly instead of resisting or denying valuable opportunities for growth. As you continue your journey, you recognize and enlist allies, individuals who believe in your growth, and that difficulties and setbacks are not failures, but rather essential tests that make you stronger. This mindset reframes challenges into evidence of struggle rather than inability, and translates them into foundational pieces of your growth narrative, the training sequences in your movie. The road back ends up being the return with the boon, where you bring back the knowledge and achievement to share it with your peers. This dispensing is not only kind but tactically essential for making new you stick. Educating, mentoring, or merely exemplifying new potentiality makes your own change tangible and lasting. Creating personal celebration rituals for milestone events reinforces these identity changes even more, making them vivid anchors for your new story. For a starting point to use these ideas right away, do the timeline remix exercise. Chart 5 major turning points in your life, and then give them new empowering chapter headings that focus on growth, agency, and meaning over victimhood or limitation. This straightforward reframing frequently discloses the ways in which the same things can serve to support highly dissimilar stories depending on the interpretive frame you use. This should be followed by an externalization interview, conducting a Q and a dialogue with your most salient problem pattern. This written dialogue establishes psychological distance that permits new insight and more adaptive responses to chronic issues. For an even deeper experience, spend a weekend on best possible self-practice. Write a clear 600-word letter from your future self and read it out loud every morning for 3 days, letting the vision settle into your consciousness and guide your everyday decisions. The long-term rewards of narrative revision go far beyond improved self-feelings. Studies show that individuals with coherent, growth-focused life stories tend to be more resilient when encountering setbacks, bouncing back more quickly and gaining meaningful insights from their challenges. They also enjoy greater motivational clarity, as their goals naturally align with their evolving identity instead of clashing with their sense of self. Perhaps most importantly, the positive ripple effects spill over to others. A clear personal story increases both empathy and leadership presence. When you know the intricate story of your own growth, you are more sensitive to others' stories. And when you live a clear, compelling story, you inevitably inspire others by your congruence and purpose. A 2024 story editing field study illustrated these effects in an educational setting, discovering that college students who rewrote setback experiences from a growth mindset reported 23% higher semester GPAs than controls. The narrative revision not only changed their emotions, it changed their behavior. The stories you share about yourself are likely the most powerful forces structuring your social reality. By applying conscious awareness and intentional craftsmanship to these stories, you take back ownership of your identity and open up what's possible in any relationship and interaction. Even the most powerful personal narrative, though, only gets you so far on your own. In our subsequent chapter, we're going to learn how to amplify your growth with strategic collaboration, a strategy that taps into unseen motivational currents most people never consider to engage. You'll find out why the way to your highest objectives may not be the solo path you've been on, but rather something much more forceful that converts tests into journeys and commitments into possibility. Chapter 8, Co-op Growth. What are the main reasons that most personal development plans falter? You've most likely witnessed it firsthand, the first rush of enthusiasm when you commit to a new objective, followed by the inevitable tapering off of passion, and eventually the private dumping of your original exciting ambition. It's a cycle so familiar, it's virtually a cultural trope. But what if the issue is not your commitment or willpower? What if it's something much more fundamental, an inaccurate presumption about the way human motivation truly operates? Reflect on the most important objective you've ever had. You probably tackled it as a solo mission, relying on your own discipline and determination to make it happen. That seems reasonable. After all, personal growth is, by nature, personal. If you want to learn a new skill, form a better habit, or push past a limitation, it feels like something you have to handle on your own. But in reality, this solitary mindset goes against much of what we know about human psychology and performance. We are, at our very core, social beings. Our brains did not develop for solitary success, but for communal survival and development. When we disregard this most basic part of our nature, we ensure our own failure before we even start. The evidence is overwhelming. A 2023 Guardian article revealed that success in achieving goals increased to a staggering 95% if individuals used to make regular check-ins with an accountability partner, in contrast to much lower results for solo efforts. A Berkeley study the next year demonstrated that people with social incentives made 35% more progress toward fitness goals compared to those with individual reward systems. These are not small effects. They're game-changing differences that can make or break whether you reach your dreams or put them on the list of failed aspirations. But why do individual plans fail so reliably? The first culprit is motivation decay. Willpower is not a steady supply. It seeps away without outside support. Alone, your motivation naturally wanes as the thrill of a new objective gives way to the drudgery of sustained effort. Without someone else observing your progress, validating your efforts, and assisting you through challenges, even the most robust initial motivation will eventually fade. This deterioration speeds up in a social comparison void. Humans inherently measure progress against other people. In the absence of points of comparison, it is hard to sustain momentum or even gauge development accurately. Are you moving forward rapidly or slowly? Is your method efficient or wasteful? Without feedback by comparison, these questions cannot be answered, and uncertainty arises that erodes perseverance. Solo growth endeavors also carry an unknown opportunity cost. Each hour you spend practicing in solitude is an hour you're not putting into cultivating relationships that would drive your progress exponentially faster. The time you're spending struggling by yourself can instead yield bonding dividends that return on both your skill building and your social capital. But having a social aspect to your goals is not sufficient. To really leverage the potential of cooperative growth, you must comprehend the psychological drivers of extended motivation and commitment. This is where the idea of cooperative growth unlocks its radical potential. Fundamentally, cooperative growth is about reimagining individual development as a collaborative pursuit instead of a solo adventure. It turns what could be boring solo effort into an exciting multiplayer experience where everyone upgrades in tandem. This methodology doesn't simply make growth more fun, it makes it profoundly more effective. The theoretical underpinnings for this methodology stem from the Octalysis gamification framework, which recognizes 8 underlying drives that push human action. Having a grasp on these drives enables you to craft growth experiences that access multiple sources of motivation at the same time, building resistant engagement that will still continue when one motivational avenue fades. The first fundamental drive is epic meaning and calling, the perception that you are part of something greater than yourself, working towards a meaningful purpose. When you're working on goals by yourself, this sense of meaning tends to be abstract or intellectual. In a cooperative setting, it becomes concrete and supported by shared values and mutual commitment. You may tap into that drive by working with others to create a joint why statement which links personal purpose to a grander purpose. Maybe your writing club is not only laboring on discrete projects, but building narratives which challenge assumptions and broaden empathy. Perhaps your gym friends are not only working out, but strengthening resilience that ripples into every corner of existence. Following this up, dubbing your group endeavor and bestowing it with history, even a hint of whimsical hyperbole, engages the storytelling-seeking aspect of your brain. Operation Phoenix or Project Reinvention sounds more enticing than my improvement plan. It isn't just a play on words, it's strategic activation of motivational loops that develop for tribal cooperation and shared meaning creation. The second fundamental drive, development and achievement, is centered on advancement, mastery of skills, and success. In solitary endeavors, successes are often ignored or acknowledged with a mere glance. In cooperative environments, advancement becomes observable, legitimized, and magnified through mutual appreciation. Designing visible experience, XP bars or progress trackers, converts intangible advancement into tangible visual feedback. Micro badges of achievement, either tangible tokens, digital rewards, or merely realized levels, serve to fulfill humanity's deep need for recognition and status indicators. By celebrating them in public before your growth community, their motivational force is magnified. One experiment in 2024 from a university tested the effect by seeing that a class utilizing a quest-based cooperative approach outperformed control classes by 0.6 GPA points while seeing significant higher engagement. The substance was the same. The framing and feedback systems alone were different, but the outcome was startlingly different. Systems thinking adds a new layer to cooperative growth through the understanding of personal mastery cycles. This methodology acknowledges that development happens fastest in feedback-dense environments where the vision-reality gap creates generative tension leading to learning. By itself, this gap creates frustration or disheartenment. In a supportive community, it becomes creative energy as others support you in bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to get to. The emotional state changes from "I'm not good enough yet" to "we're working this out together." Daily group retrospectives add to this system, providing formal opportunities to look back at progress and adjust methods. A weekly 15-minute stand-down where everyone gives brief input, challenges and adaptations makes the growth process active and adaptive. These check-ins permit ongoing calibration of quest parameters, modifying difficulty, proclaiming victories, and confronting newly arisen challenges before they sabotage momentum. The accountability architecture facilitating collaborative growth can be manifold, but the simplest and strongest is the buddy pact. A mutual understanding between two individuals to facilitate one another's growth through regular check-ins and commentary. This strategy is effective only if it is specific. Select a frequency and method of communication both are comfortable with, be it daily texts, weekly video meetings, or frequent walking meetings. Establish measures of success that render progress quantitatively measurable instead of being subjectively perceived. And create soft consequences for broken commitments, not punishments, but corrective measures that regain momentum and re-emphasize the value of follow-through. Collective efficacy, the group's collective belief in its ability to succeed, also increases motivation and perseverance. You can intentionally construct this efficacy by communicating previous successes that illustrate each member's abilities, a reservoir of confidence that maintains effort through inevitable setbacks. Rotating leadership functions avoid reliance on any one motivator and build each individual's ability to inspire and lead collaborative effort. Technology can make cooperative growth dramatically stronger when carefully utilized. A review of 2024 digital habit change determined that 79% of applications using game features lead to notable behavior change, while only 47% of gamified free apps do so. The variation wasn't in the underlying functionality, but rather in how the experience was structured to tap into more than one motivation drive at a time. When choosing digital tools to aid your growth quests, seek those that rank highly on a minimum of 5 of the 8 fundamental motivation drives. Onboarding quests should expediently set the foundational mechanics in place while providing an early victory that forms commitment. Progress visualizations, filling rings, streaks that grow, territories that expand, all fulfill our fundamental hunger for quantifiable progress. And fail-safe, reminders that sound when someone misses check-ins or gets behind. Build a safety net that stops the quick slide into permanent abandonment. Goal setting itself becomes different in a collaborative setting. The conventional SMART structure, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, is expanded to emotional and relational factors. How will accomplishing this goal make you feel? How will it enhance your relationships with others? These added considerations draw upon motivational resources that strictly rational models tend to miss. The stretch support combination brings exceptionally strong conditions for growth. When high-level goals are coupled with strong peer support, individuals routinely surpass expectation. The challenge stretches performance beyond ease, and the social support avoids the discouragement that normally accompanies stretching efforts. This equilibrium supports high targets without the burnout that often follows individual striving. Peer coaching combines systematic guidance with informal encouragement. The GROW model, goal, reality, options, will, is an easy-to-use framework that can be applied by anyone to assist others in overcoming obstacles without mandating solutions. Beginning with goal clarification, a realistic assessment of current reality, generating several creative options, and checking willingness to act in particular, this model converts fuzzy wishes into tangible action plans. Coupled with an ongoing feedback mechanism, what went well, what would you do differently next time? Generates a learning cycle that speeds up growth but without the defensiveness that usually arises from judgment. This method centers on improvement in the future instead of judgment in the past, sustaining the psychological safety required for vulnerability and development. To roll out cooperative development immediately, begin with a small party of 2 to 4 comrades brought together by reciprocal goals or objectives. Choose a quest title reflecting your combined vision. Establish win conditions clearly so everyone knows success when they see it. And establish a time limit so as to produce a sense of urgency and handleability. Share an experience board, be it physical or online, on which everyone updates each day's activity. This visibility imposes both accountability and inspiration as personal progress builds aggregate momentum. Hold at least 3 short check-ins in your first week, and then modulate frequency on what best maintains traction without being tiresome. Cooperative long-term rewards of growth build far past tangible goals. Compounding occurs because social reinforcement loops make habits more sticky and resistant to disruption. Networks grow as shared missions necessarily attract heterogeneous participants with complementary abilities and insights. Perhaps above all, the growth process itself is redefined from arduous solo labor into a fun, social activity that creates energy instead of draining it. A gigantic 2024 collective efficacy survey of 24,000 participants affirmatively confirmed these broader effects, discovering that heterogeneous growth-oriented peer clusters predicted strongly elevated life satisfaction and social cohesion. The social connections established via collaborative development made resilience assets that reached far past the initial objective, enhancing more than one level of life. This method works because it builds on our essential nature as social learners. Ever since human times, we have learned skills and knowledge not from solitary practice but through apprenticeship, mentorship, and collaboration in solving problems. Contemporary individualism has clouded this basic reality, generating the myth that meaningful personal growth must occur through individual effort. By rediscovering the communal nature of human development, you access motivational energies that have developed over thousands of years. You're not going against your grain, you're going with it. The struggle isn't avoided. Significant growth always involves effort, but it's changed from solo grinding to collaborative striving that feels meaningful and invigorating. A 2023 meta-analysis of work-based peer coaching validated such effects, producing medium to large gains in both performance and health when development is done in interactive settings compared with single training. The social context did not only render the process more pleasant. It actually redesigned the outcomes in making more important and lasting change. The greatest strength of collective growth might well be the way it reconditions identity development. When you go it alone to seek major change, you're fighting against your current self-concept with little external support for your new identity. In a supportive group, new parts of your identity get ongoing validation, speeding integration and minimizing the internal resistance that so often undermines solo change efforts. This is not about giving up personal responsibility or being dependent on others' approval. Instead, it means acknowledging that people naturally learn in relation and structuring your growth goals to work with this natural part of psychology instead of going against it. The next time you create a significant goal or vow to build a new skill, push back on the cultural norm of solo striving. Instead, identify someone who could partner with you in a shared growth journey. How could you turn individual aspirations into a collective journey that amplifies desire and multiplies outcomes? What game could you co-create together that makes the development process not only effective, but actually fun? By reframing personal development as a cooperative game, you open up motivational reserves that are unavailable in solo endeavors. You shift the psychology of development from willpower-driven struggle to connection-driven adventure. And you find that the most straightforward way to be the best version of yourself may not be the solitary path of personal discipline, but the colorful, winding path of communal discovery and mutual growth. But even the best crafted growth quests are subject to a contemporary challenge that can nullify their potential. In our next chapter, we'll discuss how the digital world we live in generates special challenges to deep connection and extended attention, and how learning a particular set of boundaries and practices can turn your relationship with technology from a source of fragmentation into a potent partner in your social growth. You'll learn why the greatest digital skill is not technical know-how, but something much more basic that very few have learned to develop in our perpetually connected world. Chapter 9, Digital Calm. Your phone buzzes. Without even thinking, you grab it. A message, a notification, breaking news, something needs your attention. 20 minutes have passed before you even realize it as you scroll through an infinite feed of information, most of it upsetting, none of it pertinent to your real life. Ring any bells? We are living in an era of unparalleled connectivity. The gadgets we use provide us with instant access to nearly all human information and enable us to reach out to anyone, anywhere, anytime. This technological wonder promised to unite us closer to make us better informed, more connected, more complete. But for many, the experience has been very different. Rather than feeling more connected, they feel more isolated. Rather than being better informed, they feel bombarded by information overload. Rather than increased satisfaction, they feel increasing anxiety and decreased concentration. What happened? And more significantly, how can we tap into the real value of digital connection without succumbing to its well-documented downsides? The solution is not to abandon technology entirely, but to cultivate a more mindful relationship with it. One that works for your benefit and strengthens your bonds instead of eroding them. This is what we could describe as digital calm. A place where technology supports your life and doesn't control it, where online engagement augments instead of substitutes in-person connections, and where your attention is still mostly in your own hands instead of being constantly hijacked by algorithmic prompts. Getting there starts with recognizing one of the most pernicious digital tendencies to have crept up over the past decade, doom scrolling. This is the habit of scrolling on bad news even when it upsets or depresses you. It's a pattern of behavior so prevalent that researchers have started to examine its psychological effects, and the results are scary. In a 2025 Norwegian survey, individuals who regularly doomscrolled were found to be 12 times more likely to say they had significant mental health concerns than those who curbed their consumption of negative news. Harvard Health Review likewise attributed binges of negative news to dramatically reduced life satisfaction among a sample group of 1,200 adults. But why? Why are we still devouring content that leaves us worse off than we were before? Part of the answer has to do with how digital platforms are constructed. News feeds and social media algorithms are designed to favor content that elicits strong emotional reactions, especially negative ones such as outrage, fear, and anxiety. This negativity bias is not an accident. It's a calculated move to optimize engagement. Negative content simply gets more clicks, more comments, and more shares than positive content. This algorithmic bias sets up a vigilance loop in your brain. As you read negative news, your body secretes cortisol, the main stress hormone, readying you for threats. Physiological arousal due to this condition keeps you on high alert for further negative information, which the algorithms readily provide. The blue light from your screen also inhibits melatonin secretion, keeping you awake and stuck in this unhealthy cycle. To break this cycle is to notice the signs that you've entered a doom scroll state. Physical signs such as a tight jaw, shallow breathing, or a tension in your shoulders usually precede awareness that you're being harmed. Emotional signs are increased irritability, a feeling of hopelessness, or a sense that you're scrolling without satisfaction or goal. When you see these breakpoint signs, it's time to enforce boundary architecture, ordered boundaries that safeguard your attention and welfare from digital overwhelm. One of the most successful strategies is the screen silence sprint. A specified interval, preferably 24 hours, during which you consciously disconnect from digital devices. A randomized controlled trial in 2025 reported that a structured digital detox cut daily smartphone use by 1 hour and 45 minutes on average, and improved mood and sleep significantly. The secret to success wasn't willpower, but planning. Knowing exactly what to do during the detox time and how to deal with it. Pre-commitment mechanisms such as focus modes, app limits, and even physical lock boxes for devices impose external constraints that assist your goals when willpower inevitably falters. These mechanisms are not confessions of weakness, but rather acknowledgments of the way human psychology really is. We can all use environmental aids to our goals. In between full detoxes, curation of food is important. Implement the 3-filter rule to your online consumption. Determine the intention of the content. Is it to inform or to manipulate? Its probable effect on your mindset. Will it leave you energized or drained? And whether it encourages inclusion or division. Does it build bridges or walls? Stuff that doesn't pass these filters isn't worth your valuable time. Proactively substitute doom sources with growth-focused accounts that teach knowledge, inspire, or impart useful skills. This isn't about suppressing reality, but about exposing oneself to information in proportions corresponding to real probabilities, not algorithmic exaggerations of what's occurring in the world. In addition to controlling consumption, digital serenity involves learning to communicate in text environments that lack the social cues of the real world. A 2024 tone mismatch study discovered that vagueness in text messages elicited defensive attributions in 63% of communications. That is, almost 2/3 of the time, individuals interpreted ambiguously worded messages as having negative intentions. To avoid these miscommunications, add an intent check prior to sending critical messages. Take a minute to put the goal into a single sentence. I want to clarify plans without pushing them, or I'm showing gratitude for their assistance. This simple habit keeps your words in line with your true purpose instead of completely leaving it to the interpretation of the recipient. Ask yourself whether your message is in need of emoji enhancement or toned down based on its emotional content and what your relationship with the recipient is. Messages that may come across as cold or blunt tend to be improved by warmth markers such as a minimal smile emoji, whereas charged communications occasionally have to be toned to avoid overwhelming the recipient. Clarity templates minimize misinterpretation even further. The Ask Context question model is a trusted template. I'm writing regarding Saturday's incident. Ask. I'm attempting to arrange transportation context. Would you like to drive alone or travel together? This method provides recipients with information they can use to respond suitably without needing to guess your intention. With visual communication, timing is critical. Stickers and gifts may add emotional bonding, but the effect is context dependent. In the beginning of conversations, they can set the tone and help build rapport. In serious conversations, they're best reserved to validate feelings without sidetracking attention. Following conflict resolution, they can rejoice in resolution and affirm good feelings. Online communication is further complicated when it spans neurological differences. The double empathy problem identified in 2024 research describes why autistic and non-autistic individuals tend to misinterpret one another online. It's not a unilateral deficit, but a shared difficulty in decoding alternative communication styles. Creating neurodiverse bridges begins with developing a collective glossary of potentially ambiguous words or phrases. One's meaning for urgent or soon may vary considerably from another's. Highlighting these variations keeps unnecessary tension at bay. The meta comment option gives us another useful tool, clearly marking your intention with your message. The next question is informational, not a criticism, or I'm showing enthusiasm here, not attempting to pressure you. These explanations avoid receivers interpreting neutral communications with negative intent. Signal matching also improves cross-neurotype understanding. Observe others' emoji and graph icon use. Some use them all the time, others only rarely, and some assign specific meanings to specific symbols. Imitating their style, but not necessarily exact duplication, shows respect for their communication style and helps minimize friction. For some interactions, explicitly agreeing to a slower pace can make the experience better. Not every message needs to be responded to instantly, and recognizing this in advance frees both sides from the burden of always being available. I may lag behind on responses at times, but I do read your messages, establishes boundaries that keep from misunderstanding delays as rejection. Group chats pose their own issues, tending to become arenas of overwhelm or social stress if not governed well. A 2023 survey indicated that being ignored in group chats increased loneliness scores by 25%, illustrating how digital disregard has genuine emotional consequence. Setting clear norms avoids many typical issues. Reserve quiet hours when notifications are silenced. Define explicit reply all etiquette. When is it sometimes necessary rather than when is a direct reply okay? And create opt-in sub-threads for specialized subjects that are not of interest to all. These formats provide the ease of group communication without the disorder that so often goes with it. Even under good management, occasionally you must break away from a group conversation. Having pre-planned exit and re-entry scripts facilitates these moves. A polite leave message may express appreciation for the group while explaining your temporary absence. I'm stepping away from the digital world for a couple of weeks to work on a project, but please be assured, I cherish this community and look forward to joining you again later. Sharing the host duty in long-established chats distributes the responsibility for conversation and avoids the tendency for one person to have the sole burden of keeping the conversation going. This sharing of hosting duties introduces new energy and viewpoints that avoid conversational stagnation. The strategic application of empathy graph icons, emojis, stickers, and other visual features can greatly augment digital communication. According to a 2024 study, messages that included mimicked emoji styles were rated as more likable and empathetic than messages that did not respect the recipient's communication style. The emoji mirroring technique is to observe and subtly match the recipient's style. If they employ a lot of emojis, you can raise your own usage, but not to the extent of overt mimicry. If they like to use few emojis, you can also limit your usage when interacting with them. Mirroring in this way gives the feeling of being in harmony that strengthens rapport. Be especially careful with sarcasm emoji piling, employing several symbols to convey irony or sarcasm. Although this may appear to make your meaning clear, studies indicate it tends to do the opposite and cause confusion more than clarity, particularly between or among different ages or cultures in which emoji have very different interpretations. For richer emotional communication, sticker storytelling presents a compelling option. Creating a 3-sticker sequence, maybe representing a sequence of feelings or reaction chain, can express subtle emotional states that would take many words to convey. A 2024 WhatsApp sticker research discovered that this type of visual communication greatly improved perceived social support among young adults. Prior to adopting these strategies, keep cultural sensitivity in mind. The meanings of emojis and stickers differ across cultures, and what appears harmless in one situation may have unintended meanings elsewhere. Communicating across cultures, then, is better done more simply until you have a mutual understanding. To start going digital calm right away, do the 24-hour digital detox exercise. Plan a day out of screens, planning alternatives ahead of time, physical books, outdoor activities, in-person social plans. Track your mood and energy levels beforehand and afterwards to make tangible proof of how digital consumption impacts your well-being. Follow this with the clarity rewrite exercise. Revisit a recent text exchange that created tension or misunderstanding, and rewrite your messages using the templates and techniques discussed. How might the conversation have unfolded differently with these approaches? This retrospective practice builds skills for future interactions. Finally, conduct an emoji empathy experiment by consciously mirroring the emoji style of 5 different people in your digital communications over the next week. Mark any changes in rapport or response quality, especially whether conversations feel smoother or more related. The long-term payoff of digital calm far outweighs the benefits of decreased screen time. Individuals who learn these methods usually indicate more stable mood states with less anxiety and fewer sleep disturbances. Their online relationships become clearer and more rewarding with less tone misfiring and more rich emotional give and take. Maybe most precious is the time dividend, hours reclaimed from useless scrolling and online drama that can be redirected into high-quality face-to-face interaction and valuable pursuits. A 2023 boundary blurring report discovered that individuals who effectively compartmentalized various facets of their online lives, establishing discrete boundaries between work and personal material, for example, indicated much greater engagement in what was most important to them and reduced levels of burnout. The problem wasn't digital technology itself, but the way it was allowed to seep into every moment and setting without boundaries. Finding digital calm isn't about rejecting technology, it's about reclaiming it. It's about taking back your attention, your time, and your emotional balance from systems built to capture and profit from them. It means shifting your relationship with technology from passive consumption to active curation, from automatic reactions to purposeful engagement. As you apply these habits, you will notice something remarkable. Real digital calm actually increases your online connections instead of cutting them short. When you engage from a balanced, deliberate state instead of an overwrought, reactive state, you share your best self in digital communication. You pay more attention, reply more attentively, and bond more truly, even in the thin vehicle of text and pictures. That is the great paradox of digital calm. By interacting with technology less habitually, you actually get more out of it. By placing limits on your digital existence, you make room for it to enrich you, not drain you. By being more discerning about your online interactions, you make them richer and more fulfilling. The virtual world is not disappearing. It will keep developing, bringing new tools, platforms, and potential for connection. The question is not whether you will be a part of this evolution, but how. Whether you will be swept up by its tides or steer with intention and purpose. Digital calm is a middle way between rejection and surrender. It recognizes both the real value of connectivity and the real danger of digital overwhelm. It offers pragmatic tools for optimizing the former and reducing the latter. And perhaps most significantly, it gives you back agency, you the flesh and blood behind the screen, instead of handing over control to algorithms and attention engineers. As you shut this book and unavoidably go back to your digital devices, take with you this profound truth. Technology has been designed to support human connection, not supplant it. The most significant encounters, the highest level of understanding, and the fullest development continue to occur when we bring our whole undistracted selves to our relationships, whether facilitated through screens or known face to face. The abilities you've cultivated across these chapters, seeing scripts, constructing strokes, giving permission, cooling conflict, igniting curiosity, establishing clear contracts, revising stories, and cultivating cooperative growth all take their richest form when your focus isn't broken by digital distraction. Digital calm provides the room for these capacities to thrive, enabling you to bring your best connected self to each interaction. This is the ultimate integration. The instant where all 9 components of social mastery converge into a cohesive strategy for human relationship. You know the scripts that guide interactions, offer sustaining strokes that establish trust, establish safety for authentic expression, navigate conflict with physiological awareness, ignite curiosity that establishes depth of understanding, set clear agreements that avoid misunderstandings, write empowering stories about who you are, partner for mutual development, and enforce digital boundaries that guard your ability for presence. Together, these practices don't just improve your social skills, they transform your entire experience of human connection. Interactions that once left you feeling drained start to become sources of energy. Relationships that seemed stagnant begin to show new life. Conversations that once felt shallow uncover surprising depth. And the social world, which may have sometimes felt like a minefield to tiptoe through, transforms into a garden to nurture and enjoy. Of course, this kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds slowly as you practice, test what works best for your specific circumstance, and synthesize the ideas that speak most to you. The path isn't straight. You'll have insights and setbacks, moments of resonance, and instances of misstep. But with every iteration of practice and contemplation, your ability to make genuine connection increases. The ultimate measure of success is not perfection, but forward motion, gradually making our way toward deeper connections, truer expression, and happier engagement with other human beings. It's about becoming more and more conversant in the language of human exchange, capable of deciphering subtle signals, responding better to changing circumstances, and forging experiences that make everyone feel seen and appreciated. As you carry on along this path beyond the covers of this book, hold in mind that the strongest social skill is not something you can do, but a state of presence. Being here, fully present, truly interested, and radically responsive to the individual person in front of you. Everything the approaches we've examined are in the service of this presence, setting conditions for genuine connection to take hold. This is your invitation to a more abundant social life. One where you're not dominated by unconscious scripts or limited by digital distraction, but free to interact with others from a position of clarity, intention, and real care. The games people play can actually become games worth playing. Cooperative journeys in human connection that elicit the best from all involved. The social world awaits your active engagement. How will you play? As you move ahead with these new social skills, you'll soon realize that your capacity to connect deeply with others hinges on yet another essential factor. Your capacity to communicate with accuracy and effect. Even the most profound ideas are locked within you if you're unable to express them clearly. This is where most people reach an unseen ceiling in their relationships and impact. The distinction between being heard and being ignored quite simply depends on the words you say and the manner in which you say them. For those ready to finish the process of completing their transformation and finally become experts at the art of human engagement, the audiobook, Words Are Power, How to Be Articulate, is the missing link that will supercharge everything you have learned here and transform your social awareness into forceful communication others can't resist or forget. Press the middle of the video now to proceed with your transformation process.